Hello guys, welcome to Fiction Quest. So in this video, we will see, what if Naruto got the power of 10-tailed god and got 10 girl of DXD to fulfill his harem? If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Sage of a New World. The end was not a glorious crescendo of light and hope. It was the wet, tearing sound of flesh and the sudden, hollowing cold of absence. One moment, Kurama's fiery chakra was a furnace in his gut, a lifelong companion in rage and resolve. The next, a void. Naruto Uzumaki felt his own life force gutter like a candle in a hurricane, pulled from him by the ghostly chains of the ghetto statue. He collapsed onto the war-torn earth, the mud and blood of his comrades a damp shroud. His senses faded. Sasuke's panicked shout was a distant echo. Sakura's desperate, green, glowing hands on his chest were a phantom warmth. He was dying. He knew it with a certainty that transcended fear. He had given everything. It wasn't enough. His vision tunneled into a pinpoint of gray, and then, even that faded to black. Silence. A profound, timeless emptiness. Then, a voice, ancient and resonant as a temple bell, echoed in the space where his thoughts used to be. So, this is how it ends for the child of the prophecy. Light bloomed behind Naruto's closed eyelids, not the harsh light of the living world, but a soft, pearlescent glow. He found himself standing, or perhaps floating, in a serene, white expanse. Before him sat a figure he recognized from the deepest recesses of his soul, a man whose chakra signature was the very foundation of his own. Hagoromo Otsutsuki, the Sage of Six Paths, hovered cross-legged, his Rinnegan eyes holding a universe of sorrow and wisdom. Old man sage, Naruto's voice was hoarse, a ghost of its former self. Am I dead? You are at the precipice, Hagoromo confirmed. His expression grim. The Biju was extracted. Your mortal life is draining away. But your will, Naruto Uzumaki, remains. Naruto looked down at his hands. They were translucent, shimmering with the last embers of his chakra. He felt no anger, only a profound weariness. I failed. Madara. Kagaya. I couldn't stop them. You have not failed. You have only reached the limits of your mortality. The sage corrected. I came to grant you power, the power of my six paths. But watching you, feeling the echo of your heart even here between worlds, I see that would not be enough. What Kagaya seeks to reclaim is not merely chakra. It is a totality she can no longer comprehend. Hagoromo's gaze intensified, seeming to peel back the layers of Naruto's very soul. I told you the story of the 10 tails. The beast born from the divine tree. That was a simplification, a myth for mortals. The 10 tails is not a beast. It is a wound, a scar. It is the fractured, Mindel, SS remnant of a being that existed before creation had a name. A god of Genesis whose power was so absolute that it had to be shattered for reality to take form. Kagaya was but a parasite who drank from that wound. The revelation settled on Naruto not as a shock, but as a truth he had somehow always known. The 10 tails rage had felt less like malice and more like cosmic agony. My brother and I merely sealed the body. Hagoromo continued, a flicker of ancient regret in his eyes. We could never soothe the soul. But you have done what I never could. You have befriended the Biju. You have shown them that a soul can be a vessel for connection, not just a prison for power. You do not seek to dominate. You seek to understand. A 9-colored sphere of light materialized in Hagoromo's hand, pulsing with an energy that made the very concept of a tailed beast bomb seem like a child's firecracker. It contained the chakra of all 9 Biju, but at its heart was something more, a chaotic, primordial force that seemed to scream and dream at the same time. I cannot give you the power of the sage. You must become something more, Hagoromo declared, his voice ringing with finality. I will bestow upon you the entirety of the 10 tails. Not as a Jinchuriki, a warden for a prisoner, but as the rightful heart of a body that has been broken for millennia. Its power will become yours. Its consciousness will merge with your own. You will become its vessel, its mind, and its soul. You will be made whole. Naruto stared at the roiling sphere. He could feel Kurama's faint, fading signature within it, alongside the others. Gyuki, Shukaku, all of them. They weren't fighting. They were waiting. For him. What will happen to me? He asked, his voice steady. Naruto Uzumaki will die, Hagoromo said without preamble. But from his ashes, a new sage shall rise. A god in truth, not just in name. It is a terrible burden, but you are the only one with the will strong enough to bear it without being consumed. There was no choice. Not really. To refuse was to let his world die. He gave a single, resolute nod. Then go forth, Hagoromo whispered, pushing the sphere of incandescent power forward. And become what you were always meant to be. The moment the sphere touched Naruto's chest, reality dissolved. It was not a surge of power, it was an annihilation of self. He felt his memories, his love for his friends, his dream of becoming Hokage, his grief for his parents, everything that made him him, shredded into constituent code. Then came the agony of the 10 tails. Eons of mindless rage, of primal loneliness, of a fractured god screaming in a cage of its own making. It flooded the void where his soul had been, threatening to drown him in its madness. But in that abyss, a single, stubborn ember of orange light remained. I will not let my friends down. That one thought, that simple, unwavering promise, became an anchor in the cosmic storm. He did not fight the 10 tails' rage. He did not try to suppress its sorrow. He accepted it. He embraced it. He wrapped his own experiences, his own pain of being an outcast, around its eons of solitude. You're not alone anymore, he thought, not with words, but with the raw essence of his being. I'm here. For the first time in an eternity, the primordial scream quieted. The agony found a reflection. The chaos found a center. The power of a god found a human heart. On the battlefield, Naruto's body arched, glowing with an impossible white light. The Geto statue's chains shattered. Black markings, like the commas of a Rinnegan, swirled across his skin, forming intricate patterns. 10 horns, crafted from pure, condensed energy, sprouted from his back, arcing like the ribs of a divine skeleton. His hair blanched to a stark, ethereal white, and when he opened his eyes, they were no longer blue. They were a brilliant, burning gold, with pupils like crosses, radiating a power that made the very air tremble and bend. The transformation was so absolute, so violent, that it tore the fabric of the world. A black chasm, a rip in the veil of dimensions, opened beneath him. With a final, sorrowful look at the fading image of his friends, Naruto fell into the void. The god had been born, and the price was his world. He awoke to the gentle sound of leaves rustling in a breeze and the distant laughter of children. The ground beneath him was soft, green grass. A stark contrast to the blood-soaked mud he remembered. He sat up, his movements feeling strange, disconnected. His body felt both impossibly light and dense as a star. A long, white coat adorned with the same black comma markings as his skin had formed around him, its tail splitting into 9 distinct pieces that drifted behind him as if weightless. He was in a park. Manicured lawns, a children's playground, a placid-looking fountain. The architecture of the surrounding buildings was completely alien, sleek, modern, and utterly unfamiliar. He closed his eyes, reaching out with his senses. The world flooded his mind with a clarity that was staggering. He could feel the life force of every blade of grass, the slow, patient thoughts of the ancient trees, the hurried, anxious energy of the humans walking along the paved paths. But the energy of this world was wrong. The natural energy was thin, almost anemic. And woven through it were other signatures, sharp and distinct. To the east, concentrated in a large, European-style building on a nearby hill, was a cluster of energies that felt like cloying perfume and burnt sugar, sweet, but with a predatory edge. Demonic. To the west, in an old, abandoned church, was a different energy, one that felt like sterile heat and brittle faith. Angelic. And scattered throughout the city, a third type, like the bit. Tear static of a broken radio and the lingering regret of a fallen star. Fallen. He was no longer a sensor. He was a living nexus of divine perception. He could feel it all, and it was deafening. With a thought, he reined it in, pulling his presence inward until he felt like little more than a ghost to the world around him. Yet, even suppressed, he knew he was a beacon. A sun pretending to be a candle. A sudden flare of that demonic energy, fast approaching, pulled him from his reverie. A magic circle, a brilliant crimson latticework of arcane symbols, bloomed on the grass 100 feet away. From it emerged a group of teenagers. A handsome blonde boy with a knightly aura, a small girl with white hair radiating immense physical power, a tall, buxom woman whose smile held the promise of a coming storm, and a brown-haired boy who seemed utterly ordinary, his gaze immediately and predictably locking onto the aforementioned woman's chest. Leading them was a girl with hair the color of fresh blood, her eyes a stunning blue-green. She carried herself with the unassailable confidence of royalty, her demonic power a velvet cloak around her. Her eyes, however, widened almost imperceptibly as she saw him. She might have been drawn by his energy signature, but what she found was clearly not what she expected. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice melodic but laced with steel. "This is Gremory territory. I have never sensed a power like yours before. State your name and your purpose." Naruto rose to his feet, the movement silent and fluid. He looked at them, taking in their postures, their auras. The way the ordinary-looking boy was practically drooling. He was so tired. "I am Naruto," he said, his voice quiet, yet it carried across the distance as if he were standing right next to them. "I have no purpose here. I'm just lost." The brown-haired boy, Issei, finally tore his gaze away from his leader's assets and focused on Naruto. "Hey, what's with the weird cosplay getup? And the horns? You some kind of freak?" Quote. Before anyone could react, Naruto flicked his wrist. He didn't channel chakra or energy. He simply willed it. The air around Issei solidified and shoved, sending the boy tumbling head over heels onto the grass with a surprised yelp. It was the equivalent of swatting a fly. The atmosphere changed instantly. The blonde boy, Kiba, had a sword in his hand. The small girl, Kaneko, crouched, her fists clenched. The smiling woman, Akano, had sparks of lightning dancing at her fingertips. "You dare attack my pawn?" Rias Gremory hissed, her crimson power flaring to life. "You have two choices. You can either become a part of my peerage, or you can be eliminated as a threat." Naruto looked at her, his golden eyes holding the weight of 1,000 battles and an eon of solitude. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even annoyed. He was just weary of the endless cycle of threats and posturing. "You have it backwards," he said, his voice still unnervingly calm. "I am not the one in danger here." That was all the provocation Kiba needed. He moved, a blur of speed that would have been impressive in Naruto's old world. To Naruto's new senses, he was moving through molasses. The enchanted blade of his sword, shimmering with demonic power, sliced through the air, aimed directly for Naruto's neck. Naruto didn't move his feet. He didn't even turn his body. He simply raised his right hand, catching the razor-sharp edge of the sword between his index and middle fingers. Clink. The sound was pathetic, a dinner knife tapping against stone. The force of the blow dissipated into nothing. Kiba's eyes went wide with disbelief, his forward momentum stopped so completely it was as if he'd run into a mountain. He tried to pull his sword back, but it was held fast. From above, Akano struck. Era, you shouldn't take your eyes off the sky." A bolt of yellow lightning, crackling with holy power, a strange and potent combination, lanced down from the clear sky. Naruto glanced up. He released Kiba's sword and raised his now empty hand, palm open to the heavens. The lightning struck his palm with a deafening crash, and vanished. It didn't explode. It didn't arc off him. It was simply gone. Absorbed. A faint, golden glow pulsed in his eyes for a second before fading. "Interesting," he murmured, more to himself than to her. A fallen angel's power mixed with a devil's. Unbalanced. Akano's playful smile faltered, replaced by a flicker of genuine shock. From his flank, Kaneko lunged, her small frame a cannonball of raw, physical power. She threw a punch aimed at his ribs. A blow that could shatter concrete. Naruto turned to face her. Instead of blocking or dodging, he gently placed his open palm on her forehead. He didn't push. He simply let a sliver of his own life force, pure sage energy, flow into her. Kaneko froze mid-strike, her body locking up. For a Nekomata, whose senses were attuned to the flow of life, the sensation was overwhelming. It was like a single drop of water being exposed to the entire ocean. It wasn't hostile. It was vast, ancient, and so intensely alive that it overloaded her every sense, pacifying her instincts completely. Her eyes, usually so stoic, were wide with a terrifying awe. Rias watched her entire peerage, her family, be neutralized in under 5 seconds, without their opponent taking a single step. The sheer, impossible chasm in their power levels was a physical thing, pressing down on her. This was not a stray devil or a wandering magician. This was something else entirely. Left with no other option, she brought her own power to bear. Demonic energy, the crimson power of destruction of the House of Baal, condensed into a swirling orb of black and red in her hand. It was her strongest attack, a spell that didn't just burn or blast, but annihilated whatever it touched. Disappear, she screamed, thrusting her hand forward. This was the only moment Naruto's calm expression shifted. He saw the nature of her power, pure erasure, and it was a faint, pathetic echo of something far greater that now resided within him. One of the 10 horns on his back, a jet-black orb no larger than a fist, detached and floated silently in front of him. This was a truth-seeking orb, the ultimate defense and offense, a manifestation of his will that could negate all forms of ninjutsu, or in this case, magic. He didn't need to counter the attack. He just had to deny its existence. The orb drifted forward and gently touched the edge of Rias's sphere of destruction. There was no explosion, no shockwave. The crimson-black orb of annihilation simply unraveled. Like a sweater catching on a nail, the complex magic came undone, its energy dissolving into harmless motes of light that faded into the evening air. Rias Gremory, heiress to one of the underworld's most powerful families, a prodigy known as the crimson-haired Ruin Princess, stood utterly defeated, her ultimate attack erased as if it were a child's crayon scribble. Silence descended upon the park. Kiba was panting, his sword feeling impossibly heavy. Akino's smile was gone, replaced by a wary, calculating gaze. Kaneko had retreated, hiding behind Kiba, her eyes never leaving Naruto. Issei was still on the ground, his jaw hanging open in pure, unadulterated shock. Rias lowered her trembling hand. Her pride was shattered, but her intelligence was razor-sharp. Intimidation had failed. Combat was suicide. That left only one path. What are you?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a raw, desperate need to understand what she was facing. Naruto let the truth-seeking orb drift back to its place among his horns. He looked at the terrified group of teenagers, and for the first time, they saw something past the overwhelming power. They saw a profound and aching loneliness in his golden eyes. The look of a soldier who had won a war only to find himself stranded on an alien shore. "I told you," he said, his voice heavy with a weariness that seemed older than the world itself. "I'm lost." Rias took a deep, steadying breath, her mind racing. This being could have obliterated them. It could have leveled the entire town. It hadn't. It had shown restraint, only reacting to their aggression. It was powerful, but it wasn't rampaging. And it was alone. An opportunity. A terrifying, monumental opportunity. She straightened up, forcing a measure of her regal composure back into her posture. "Forgive my aggressive welcome. When a power like yours appears in one's territory, one must be cautious." She offered a small, formal bow. "My name is Rias Gremory. The building you sense on that hill is the clubhouse for my associates. It is a safe place. If you are truly lost, I can offer you shelter, a place to stay, and any information we can provide. In exchange," she finished, her gaze direct, "I would only ask for your story." Naruto considered her offer. He was alone. He was in a world he didn't understand. A world filled with new dangers and new rules. He had the power of a god, but he had no home. This girl, this devil, was offering a hand. It might be a calculated move on her part, a way to keep an eye on him. But it was also a lifeline. He gave a slow, tired nod. "All right, Rias Gremory, I accept." Deep in the cold, stone basement of the abandoned Kuo church, a man with wild silver hair and a manic grin polished a massive, wicked-looking sword made of pure, solidified light. A small, crystal lacrima on a nearby crate glowed with a faint blue light. A voice, cold, serene, and utterly devoid of emotion, emanated from it. "Report, Freed." "Ha ha ha." Freed Selzen cackled, his tongue darting out to lick the flat of his blade. "You ain't gonna believe this. The little red devil by TCH and her crew picked a fight with some new freak in the park. And they got their asses handed to them. Didn't even look like the new guy was trying. There was a pause from the other end. Describe the anomaly's power. Dunno. Weird. Freaky. He just stopped stuff. Caught a sword, ate some lightning, made the Gremory girl's big bad boom ball just fizzle out. Oh, and he's got these weird black balls floating around him. Creepy stuff, Freed reported with sadistic glee. Truth-seeking orbs, the voice whispered, a flicker of what might have been academic curiosity in its tone. Impossible. That is an attribute of the creator. Another pause, longer this time. The anomaly has made contact with the Gremory faction. Continue to observe. Do not engage. We must gauge its nature and its weaknesses before it is purged from his system. Do you understand, Stray? Yeah, I get it. Watch the freaks. Loud and clear, Freed sneered, turning his crazed eyes back to his sword. But if he gets in my way of killing some devils, all bets are off. The lacrima's light faded, leaving him alone in the darkness. The Occult Research Club building felt strangely mundane. It smelled of old books, black tea, and the faint, sweet scent of Rias's perfume. It was a stark, almost comical contrast to the cosmic power that had just been on display. Naruto sat on one of the worn velvet couches, his 9 coattails pooling around him. The others kept their distance, watching him with a fragile mixture of fear and intense curiosity. Rias sat opposite him, composing herself as she prepared to question on the being who had so effortlessly shattered her understanding of power. He was a god in a den of devils. He had found a temporary sanctuary, a brief respite from the void. But as he looked at the wary faces around him, Naruto Uzumaki knew one thing for certain. His war was far from over. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2. The Crimson-Haired Princess and the Priestess of Thunder. The Occult Research Club's main room was a study in controlled tension. Naruto sat on one couch, a nexus of silent, coiled power, while Rias Gremory and her peerage occupied the facing furniture, their postures a mixture of formal respect and palpable anxiety. Issei, in particular, looked like he was trying to make himself as small as possible, a feat for which his ego was ill-suited. So, let me see if I have this correct, Naruto said, his golden eyes sweeping over them. He had been listening for the better part of an hour, absorbing their explanations with an unnerving placidity. 3 factions, devils, angels, and fallen angels, fought a great war millennia ago. Your creator, the God of the Bible, and the original 4 great Satans all perished in that war. Now you exist in a fragile ceasefire, a cosmic cold war. Are policed by the descendants of the survivors. Rias nodded, her crimson hair catching the lamplight. That is the simplified version, yes. The world is maintained by a delicate balance of power. Your sudden appearance, it's like dropping a mountain into a perfectly still lake. The ripples will be felt everywhere. And these sacred gears are weapons left by this dead god, embedded in the souls of humans. He continued, the concept clicking into place with a familiar resonance. It was a variation on Jinchuriki, only the Biju were weapons instead of conscious beings. A crueler, emptier version of his own past. They are miracles, holding immense power. Kiba supplied, his hand resting near the hilt of his sword, a nervous habit. Issei's boosted gear is one of the 13 Longinus class gears, said to be capable of killing a god. All eyes turned to Issei, who puffed out his chest for a moment before deflating under Naruto's impassive gaze. The idea that this lecherous, loud-mouthed boy held the power to slay a deity was, Naruto decided, the most absurd thing he had heard all night. We have been forthcoming with you, Rias said, her tone shifting from informative to inquisitive. It is only fair you reciprocate. What are you, and what can you do? Naruto fell silent, considering the question. How could he explain the 10 tails? The divine tree, Kagaya, it was a history as convoluted and bloody as their own. He settled on a simpler truth. I am the vessel of a power that predates my world. A primordial force of creation and destruction. As for what I can do, he stood, his white coat swirling around him. The others tensed, but he simply walked past them to the large window overlooking the club's backyard. With a gesture, he slid it open, letting the cool night air spill into the room. Observe. He stepped out onto the grass, the others crowding at the window to watch. Naruto placed his palm flat on the earth. He didn't gather chakra or chant an incantation. Imply reached into the soil with his will, accessing the very concept of life and growth that slumbered within it. The ground groaned, not a violent tremor, but a deep, resonant hum of awakening life. Thick, woody roots, glowing with a soft golden light, erupted from the earth, twisting and weaving together at an impossible speed. Beams of solid wood rose like columns, floorboards knit themselves together from living fibers. And a roof of interlocking planks bloomed into existence. In less than 30 seconds, where there had once been an empty lawn, there now stood a perfect, full-scale replica of the Occult Research Club building. It was not a crude approximation. It was an identical twin, down to the last windowpane and roof tile, smelling of fresh-cut pine and raw, untamed life energy. Naruto lifted his hand from the ground, and the golden glow faded. The new building stood silent and solid under the moonlight. He turned back to the stunned faces in the window. "I can do that," he said simply. The display of raw, casual creation was infinitely more terrifying than his earlier show of force. Rias's power of destruction could annihilate. Akino's lightning could incinerate. But this was the power to shape reality itself. To create something complex and massive from nothing but dirt and will. It wasn't the power of a king or a warrior. It was the power of a god. Later, back inside the original clubhouse, the atmosphere had shifted. The fear was still present, but it was now tempered with a deep, profound awe. Rias, recovering her composure, found herself looking at Naruto in a new light. He was not just an asset to be controlled or an enemy to be feared. He was a mystery, and a deeply compelling one. "Your world, it must have been a place of incredible power," she ventured, sitting closer to him now. Her caution warring with her curiosity. Naruto's gaze grew distant. "It was a world of incredible pain. We fought for generations, over land, over power, over hatreds so old no one remembered how they started." He thought of the Uchiha and the Senju, of the endless cycle of revenge. "I fought to end that cycle. To create a world of peace." "Did you succeed?" Rias asked softly. A flicker of something, grief, loss, regret, passed through his golden eyes. "I won the final battle. But I lost the world." The quiet finality of his words hung in the air. Rias felt a pang of unexpected empathy. For all his unimaginable power, he was an exile. A king with no kingdom. A hero with no home. In that moment, her desire to use him for the benefit of her house was eclipsed by a genuine human desire to understand him. While Rias tried to breach his emotional walls, Akino decided on a more direct approach. She moved with a seductive grace, sitting on the arm of Naruto's couch and leaning in close, her ample cleavage on full display. My, she purred, her voice a low, husky whisper that usually left men flustered. "All that power must be so stressful to manage. Perhaps you need someone to help you relax." She traced a finger along his shoulder, her lightning chakra sparking faintly at the tip. Naruto didn't react as she expected. He didn't blush, he didn't stammer. He didn't even seem to notice the blatant seduction. Instead, he turned his head slowly, his golden eyes looking not at her face or her body, but through her, as if examining the very structure of her soul. "Your energy is in conflict," he stated, his voice devoid of judgment. "The lightning of the fallen, the demonic power of the devil. They pull at each other. A constant storm inside you. It must be exhausting." Quote. Akino's playful mask shattered. Her smile froze, her hand recoiling as if burned. No one had ever spoken of her heritage so bluntly. It was her secret shame, the source of her pain. The reason she had rejected her father and the holy power she had inherited. To everyone else, she was either the priestess of thunder of the Gremory peerage or a seductive sadist. He saw the broken thing at her core. She started, but the words caught in her throat. "There is no shame in what you are," Naruto continued, his voice softening. "A being of two worlds. It is not a weakness. Your power is not unbalanced because it is flawed. It is unbalanced because you refuse to accept half of yourself." He met her eyes, and for the first time, she saw no lust, no calculation. Only a profound and unwavering acceptance. "The light is a part of you, Akino Himehima. You cannot find balance by hating the sun." Tears pricked at the corners of Akino's eyes. She straightened up abruptly, her carefully constructed facade of seduction crumbling to reveal the vulnerable woman beneath. She turned away, unable to meet his gaze, and mumbled something about making tea before retreating quickly to the kitchen. Rias watched her go, stunned into silence. In a few simple sentences, Naruto had reached a part of her queen that no one, not even Rias herself, had ever been allowed to see. The call came just before midnight. A frantic, terrified plea from one of Rias's contracted familiars monitoring the town. There was a battle at the old church. A stray exorcist was attacking, and the nun who had been granted sanctuary there was in danger. Freed Selzen, Rias snarled, her expression hardening as she hung up. A psychotic third-rate exorcist. He should be no match for Rainer and the others. Rainer is a fallen angel, Akino added, returning from the kitchen with a tray, her composure mostly restored, though her eyes still held a new, thoughtful light whenever she looked at Naruto. She and her group are watching over the girl, Asuya Argento. This shouldn't be a problem. Naruto stood. He had felt the spike of energy from across town. A chaotic, frenzied power that grated on his senses. There's something wrong with his energy. It's tainted, corrupted. We're going, Rias declared, a crimson magic circle already forming at her feet. Naruto, you should stay here. This is devil business. The girl is in danger, Naruto replied, his tone leaving no room for argument. That makes it my business. He didn't need a magic circle. He simply took a step, and the space around him seemed to fold. He vanished from the clubhouse and reappeared on the front lawn, waiting. With a sigh of resignation, Rias teleported her peerage to the church. They emerged into chaos. The church grounds were a wreck, pews shattered and the altar desecrated. The bodies of several fallen angels, including Danesik and Calawarner, lay still on the floor. In the center of the room, Rainer, her black wings torn and bleeding, was struggling to hold off a maniacal Freed Selzen. The exorcist was a whirlwind of motion and light. His movements were jerky, unnatural, far faster than a normal human's. His eyes glowed with a faint, malevolent blue light, and glowing runes, etched like tattoos, pulsed on his arms. His light sword was no longer just a blade, it was a screaming spear of energy that tore through the fallen angel's defenses. Cowering behind the ruined altar was a young, blonde-haired girl in a nun's habit, her eyes wide with terror. Asuya Argento. Ha ha ha, come on, little crow. I thought fallen were supposed to be tough. Freed cackled, his blade forcing Rainer back step by agonizing step. The big bosses want the little healer alive, but they said I could play with you first. Issei. Boosted gear. Rias commanded. Boost. The sound echoed through the church as Issei's red gauntlet materialized. He charged, aiming a punch at Freed's back. But the enhanced exorcist was too fast. He spun, parrying Issei's punch with his blade, the impact sending Issei staggering backward, his gauntlet sizzling. A little red dragon. Fun. Freed shrieked, preparing to run Issei through. It was then that Naruto appeared. He didn't teleport in a flash of light or a swirl of magic. He was simply there, standing between Freed and Issei, his back to his new companions. Freed's manic grin widened. Ooh, the new freak. The bosses told me to watch you, but this is a much better view. He lunged, his light sword aimed directly at Naruto's heart, screaming, Die, devil-loving monster. Naruto didn't move, he simply raised a hand. One of the black orbs floating behind him shot forward, smaller and faster than a bullet. It didn't transform into a shield or a weapon. It simply met the tip of Freed's sword. The effect was instantaneous and absolute. The sword of pure, holy light, a weapon that could sear the flesh of any devil, did not shatter. It dissolved. From the tip to the hilt, it turned into motes of gray dust, the holy energy within it utterly negated, erased from existence. Freed froze, his hand still gripping a hilt that was no longer attached to a blade. His crazed eyes stared at the empty space, his mind unable to process what had just happened. Before he could scream, another truth-seeking orb shot forward. It morphed mid-flight, elongating into a thin, black rod. It didn't strike him. It formed a simple, perfect clamp around his torso, pinning his arms to his sides with unyielding pressure. The rod then lifted him effortlessly into the air, leaving him dangling and helpless a few feet off the ground. The entire fight had lasted less than 2 seconds. Silence reigned. Rias and her peerage stared, their minds once again struggling to comprehend the scale of his power. He hadn't just defeated the enemy, he had invalidated him, rendering his power and his very nature meaningless. "Kill him," Rias ordered, her voice cold and hard. "He is a fanatic and a danger to everyone. Eliminate him now." Naruto turned his head, his golden eyes meeting hers. "No." The single word was not a request. It was a statement of fact. "He is a monster," Kiba argued, stepping forward. "He slaughtered those fallen angels and would have killed Asia." "I know what he is," Naruto said, his gaze returning to the struggling, cursing exorcist. "But he is defeated and powerless. There's no honor in executing a man who can no longer fight. Killing him now would just be an execution. That is not my way." Rias opened her mouth to argue, but the sheer conviction in his voice stopped her. This was not a point of debate for him. It was a fundamental principle. Ignoring their protests, Naruto walked up to the suspended Freed. He placed his right hand on the man's forehead. Freed's eyes rolled back in his head as Naruto closed his own, pushing his consciousness past the exorcist's frantic thoughts and into the raw data of his memories. He saw it all. The sterile, emotionless voice giving orders through a lacrima. The painful ritual of having the angelic runes carved into his skin, a process that warped his life force. He saw the face of a serene, silver-haired angel overseeing the procedure, a being whose power felt vast and cold. He heard the name of their cause. The Metatron Protocol, a plan to purify the world of anomalies that 3 the divine order left behind by God. And Naruto himself was designated as the primary anomaly. He pulled his hand back, the contact lasting only a few seconds. Freed slumped against his bonds, foam frothing at his lips, his mind shattered by the invasive, overwhelming mental contact. Naruto lowered the now unconscious man to the floor, the black clamp dissolving back into an orb. He turned to Rias. "He can be your prisoner. You will find his mind informative." His attention then shifted to the corner of the room, where the young nun, Asia Argento, was slowly getting to her feet, helped by a wounded but relieved Rainer. Naruto walked towards her, his presence no longer suppressive but calm and reassuring. Asia flinched as he approached, conditioned to fear anything non-human. But as he drew closer, she felt something strange. His energy was divine, more potent than any angel she had ever met, but it wasn't the sterile, judgmental light of heaven. It was warm, vibrant, and pulsed with the raw, chaotic energy of life itself. It felt like standing in the heart of a primordial forest, ancient and overwhelmingly vital. He stopped a few feet from her and knelt, bringing himself to her eye level. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice gentle. She could only nod, tears streaming down her face from the terror of the ordeal. "You're safe now," he said, and the simple words carried the weight of an unbreakable vow. He offered her a hand. "Come with us. I will protect you." Asia looked from his offered hand to his kind, golden eyes. This being had just displayed power beyond comprehension. Yet he spoke to her with a gentleness she hadn't felt since she was cast out of the church. Hesitantly, she placed her small, trembling hand in his. As Naruto stood, helping her to her feet, the Gremory peerage watched in silence. He had arrived in their world a mystery, a force of nature they hoped to control. But in one night, he had shown them the meaning of true creation, demonstrated a will of iron, and extended his protection to the weak and the frightened. He wasn't a weapon to be wielded. He was a pillar, and they were all, Rias was beginning to realize, taking shelter in his shadow. Chapter 2 End. Chapter 3. The Stray Cat and the Holy Sword. In the days that followed, a fragile routine settled over the Occult Research Club. Asia Argento, with her gentle nature, was quickly welcomed. Her presence a calming balm on the group's frayed nerves. Naruto, for his part, became a silent, watchful fixture. He spoke little, but when he did, his words carried an undeniable weight. He spent hours simply sitting in the main room, his eyes closed, his senses extended. He was not meditating in the way of a monk, he was learning. He tasted the flow of demonic magic, dissected the structure of a healing spell, and mapped the ley lines of the entire town, committing this new world's fundamental physics to memory. His sheer presence, however, was a constant, low-level strain on Kaneko Tuju. For a Nekomata, whose entire being was an antenna for life force and ki, being near Naruto was like living next to the sun. His energy was not hostile, but its sheer, overwhelming scale was oppressive. It was a constant reminder of how small and fragile she was. She took to finding the farthest corner of any room he was in, curling up on a chair with a bag of snacks, and erecting a wall of stoic silence around herself. She wasn't afraid of him, not exactly. She was unnerved by him. His power was a roaring ocean, and she felt like she was perpetually on the verge of drowning in it. Naruto noticed her avoidance. He could feel her inner turmoil as clearly as he could feel the rustling of the leaves outside. It was a familiar feeling, the pain of a power you didn't ask for, the fear of what it made you. One afternoon, while the others were out distributing flyers for the club, a mundane task Rias insisted was necessary for maintaining their cover, he found her alone in the clubhouse kitchen, methodically working her way through a box of chocolate bars. He didn't speak at first, simply leaning against the doorframe, his presence announcing itself quietly. Kaneko stiffened, her shoulders hunching slightly. But she didn't turn around. "Your key is agitated," Naruto said, his voice soft. "It has been ever since I arrived. Am I the cause?" Kaneko took another deliberate bite of chocolate, chewing slowly before she answered. "You're too loud." It was not the answer he expected. "Loud. Your presence," she clarified, finally turning to look at him, her golden eyes narrowed. "It's big. It pushes on everything." Naruto considered this. For him, reigning in his power felt like second nature, but he was reigning in a star. Even contained, its gravity would affect everything around it. "I am sorry," he said, and the sincerity in his voice made her blink. "I do not mean to cause you discomfort." "It's not your fault," she mumbled, looking away. "I'm just sensitive to it." He saw the flicker of self-loathing in her eyes, the same look he'd seen in the mirror for years. The look of someone who hated a part of themselves they couldn't control. Without another word, he walked past her and out the back door. Confused and a little annoyed, Kaneko watched him go, then, her curiosity piqued, she followed. He was standing in the small patch of lawn where he had created the duplicate building, which had since been unmade, its wood returning to the earth as if it had never been. He placed a hand on the ground, just as he had before. This time, however, the creation was far more delicate. A single, slender sapling of a cherry blossom tree sprouted from the ground, growing with quiet grace until it was a mature, blossoming tree. A circle of soft, mossy grass grew around its base. A small, clear spring bubbled up from the earth nearby, forming a tiny, gurgling pond where koi fish made of pure, solidified water swam in lazy circles. The air in this small alcove became still and serene, saturated with a peaceful, natural energy that felt clean and pure. His own immense aura was still present, but here, it was filtered, harmonized with the life he had just created. Turning from a roaring sun into the gentle warmth of a perfect spring afternoon. "When the world is too loud," Naruto said, not looking at her, "it helps to have a quiet place." Kaneko stared at the small, perfect garden. It was a gift. A gesture of understanding so profound it bypassed words entirely. He wasn't trying to fix her or pry into her past. He was simply giving her a sanctuary. She took a tentative step into the garden. And for the first time since he had arrived, she felt the crushing weight of his presence lift, replaced by a sense of profound peace. She looked at him, the silent, white-haired god, and felt the first, fragile seed of trust begin to take root. Their peace was shattered the next day. They arrived at Kuo Academy to find a scene of contained chaos near the school gates. Kiba and Issei were standing defensively in front of two strangers, a young woman with short, blue hair and a stern expression, and another with long, brown hair tied in twintails, whose cheerful smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Both were dressed in the severe, practical uniform of church exorcists. The blue-haired woman, Zenobia Quarta, held a massive broadsword wrapped in cloth slung over her back. The cheerful one, Irina Shido, carried a similar, though smaller, wrapped blade. "And I will ask you one last time, devil," Zenobia was saying, her voice cold and clipped. "Do you know the whereabouts of the stolen Excalibur fragments? Even if we did, why would we tell you?" Kiba retorted, his hand on the H-guard of his own sword. "Because if you are harboring them, we will cut you down where you stand in the name of the Lord," Zenobia stated, her tone leaving no doubt it was a promise, not a threat. Before the standoff could escalate, Naruto and the others arrived. The moment Naruto stepped into the vicinity, both exorcists froze. Their heads snapped in his direction, their eyes wide with disbelief. Irina's smile vanished, replaced by an expression of horrified awe. Zenovia's hand flew to the hilt of her sheathed sword, her knuckles white. To them, it was like the sun had just appeared in the middle of the schoolyard. Naruto's divine energy, even suppressed, was an undeniable, world-shaking truth to their trained senses. But it was a scripture they had never read, a hymn in a language they didn't understand. It was holy, yet it felt wild, untamed, utterly alien to the rigid, structured divinity of heaven they served. What is that? Irina whispered, her body trembling slightly. A god, Zenovia breathed, her eyes narrowed in suspicion. But not ours. It must be a rogue deity. An enemy of the faith. Her gaze hardened into righteous fury. Devils consorting with a false god. The corruption in this town runs deeper than we thought. She drew her weapon. The cloth wrappings fell away to reveal not one sword, but a fusion of several blades, a massive, brutal weapon that radiated a palpable aura of destruction. It was the legendary blade, Durandal. In the name of the one true God, I will pass judgment upon you, she declared, and charged. Rias and the others prepared to intervene, but Naruto held up a hand, stopping them. This is a misunderstanding. Let me handle it. Zenovia was fast, her charge powered by faith and physical enhancement. She swung Durandal in a devastating overhead arc, the sheer force of it meant to cleave a lesser being in two. Naruto didn't meet the blow. He simply took a single, fluid step to the side. At the same time, he reached out and tapped the flat of her blade with 2 fingers. It was a minuscule amount of contact. But he channeled a precise pulse of his own energy into the sword, not to destroy it, but to disrupt its balance. The immense weapon, now impossibly heavy on one side, twisted in Zenovia's grip. Her perfectly executed attack veered wildly off course, carving a deep furrow in the ground where Naruto had been standing a moment before. She stumbled, her momentum broken, her eyes wide with shock at the sudden betrayal of her own legendary weapon. Your movements are strong, but rigid, Naruto observed calmly. You rely entirely on the power of the sword, not your own skill. From the other side, Irina attacked. Her own Excalibur fragment, Excalibur mimic, gleaming in her hand. For the glory of Michael-sama, she cried, her attack a flurry of swift, precise thrusts of light. Naruto didn't even look at her. He bent his knees slightly, placing his palm on the ground. The earth does not care for your glory. He channeled his will into the dirt. The ground beneath Irina's feet instantly turned from solid earth to thick, grasping mud. Her charge dissolved into a clumsy, sliding mess. Her feet sank, robbing her of all leverage and speed. Her flurry of attacks fell short, her balance completely compromised. And the wind does not heed your prayers, Naruto continued, raising his other hand. A gentle but irresistible current of air swirled around Zenovia, pushing against her as she tried to recover, making every movement feel like she was wading through thick water. He was controlling the battlefield itself. He wasn't overpowering them, he was rendering their brand of power obsolete. Frustrated and enraged, Zenovia roared and poured more of her power into Durandal, swinging it wildly. Naruto flowed around her attacks like water, never more than an inch from the blade's path but never being touched. In one smooth motion, he stepped inside her guard, his hand darting out. He didn't strike her, he simply plucked Durandal from her grasp as if taking a toy from a child. In the same motion, he flicked his wrist, and a small, controlled whirlwind shot out, snagging Excalibur mimic from a floundering Irina's hand. Both holy swords flew through the air and embedded themselves, hilt deep, into the trunk of a nearby tree, side by side. The two exorcists stood disarmed, breathing heavily, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and humiliation. The entire fight had taken less than 10 seconds. True strength is not the power you wield, but the harmony you have with the world around you, Naruto said, his golden eyes holding no malice, only the calm certainty of a teacher. Your faith makes you strong, but it also makes you blind. You saw a power you didn't recognize and immediately labeled it an enemy. You never stopped to ask, to understand. He turned and walked towards the embedded swords, pulling them from the tree with ease. He held them out to the two stunned women. These are yours. I have no quarrel with you. Zenobia stared at him, then at the offered sword, her mind reeling. She had been defeated, not just defeated, but dismantled, lectured, and then shown mercy. It was an experience so foreign to her that she didn't know how to process it. Before she could take the sword, the sky above the academy darkened, as if a storm cloud had instantly formed. A massive, swirling vortex of dark energy opened, and from it, a voice boomed, dripping with arrogance and amusement. Well, what a delightful little party. Devils, exorcists, and a divine anomaly all in one place. It saves me the trouble of gathering you all myself. A figure descended slowly from the vortex. He had 10 black angel wings, a cruel, handsome face, and a crazed light in his eyes. It was Kokobile, a leader of the fallen angels and a high-ranking cadre of the Gremory. Kokobile, Rias gasped, her body tensing. I've grown so very bored of this pathetic peace, the fallen angel announced, spreading his arms wide. So I decided to start a war. The last one was so much fun. And I have the perfect catalyst. He gestured to Zenobia and Irina. I believe you two are looking for these. He snapped his fingers, and 4 more figures appeared behind him, each holding a different Excalibur fragment. He had stolen them all. And just to add a little spice to the coming chaos, Kokobile continued, his grin widening as he looked down at the 2 exorcists. I thought, why? Oh, you should know a little secret your precious leaders have been keeping from you. The reason you pray and no one answers. The reason heaven's system is so rigid and flawed. It's because God is dead. He died in the Great War. Along with the original Satans. Your faith is built on a tomb. The words struck Zenobia and Irina like a physical blow. Irina stumbled back, her face paling, her cheerful demeanor cracking like a porcelain doll. No, that's a lie. A blasphemy, is it? Kokobile mocked. Then why is a heretic like me still alive? Why is heaven so afraid of making a move? Open your eyes, little girls. You've been praying to a corpse. His gaze then fell upon Naruto, and his grin turned predatory. And you, I don't know what you are, but your power is magnificent. The perfect spark to set this whole, dreary world on fire. Join me, and we shall bring about an age of glorious destruction. Naruto looked up at the posturing fallen angel, his expression unchanged. I have no interest in your war. Oh, you will, Kokobile chuckled, because I'm going to burn this school, this town, and everyone in it to the ground. Let's see if you can stop me. With a final, mad laugh, his image flickered and vanished, leaving behind only the oppressive feeling of his dark power. Silence descended. Zenobia and Irina were on their knees, their world shattered. God was dead. Their entire life, their purpose, their faith. It was all a lie. It was Naruto who broke the silence. He walked over to the 2 distraught exorcists. His goal is to create chaos, he said, his voice cutting through their despair. He wants us to fight each other while he destroys everything. We cannot give him what he wants. He looked from them to Rias. Your factions may be enemies, but for now, you have a common foe. He threatened this town. He threatened my friends. He threatened the girl I promised to protect. He looked down at Zenobia, whose eyes were filled with a confusing storm of rage, grief, and dawning respect for the being who had just defeated her. The truth of your God does not matter right now, Naruto said. What matters is protecting the innocent people who will die if we do nothing. So, I will ask you once. Will you stand and fight with us, or will you let your broken faith be the reason this town is destroyed? His words were not a command, but a choice. A clear, undeniable call to action. Rias looked on, realizing that in a matter of minutes, Naruto had not only asserted his dominance but was now forging an alliance she would have thought impossible. As if on cue, a small, intricate communication lacrima in Zenovia's pocket glowed faintly. A voice, serene and cold, the same voice that had spoken to Fried, whispered a message only she and Irina could hear. The fallen angel is a target of opportunity. The anomaly is the primary objective. Use this chaos to test its limits. Ascertain its threat level to the system. Do not fail. Zenovia's head snapped up, her eyes locking with Naruto's. Her personal crisis of faith was now intertwined with a direct, secret order. She was being ordered to probe the very being who was now offering her an alliance. With a grim resolve, she pushed herself to her feet. taking the hilt of Durandal from Naruto's hand. Kokobile has desecrated the name of God and stolen holy relics, she said, her voice shaking but firm. As a warrior of the church, it is my duty to stop him. We will fight with you. Irina, wiping tears from her eyes, nodded and took her own blade, her faith replaced by a simple, burning need for retribution. An uneasy, fragile alliance was formed, born from shared disaster and brokered by a god from another world. They stood together, devils, exorcists, and a sage, a small, defiant line against the coming storm. Above them, the sky over Kuo Academy continued to darken as Kokobile's forces began to gather, the very air crackling with the promise of war. Chapter 3 End. Chapter 4. The War of a Fallen God. The sky above Kuo Academy was weeping black ink. A colossal magic circle, intricate and malevolent, stretched from horizon to horizon, sealing the school grounds from the outside world. It pulsed with a sickly purple light, casting the buildings and trees in the colors of a fresh bruise. Below, on the athletic field, the small, defiant group stood as Kokobile's opening salvo began to manifest. The earth groaned and split, and from these fissures emerged demonic beasts, hulking, three-headed Cerberus hounds with mangy black fur and eyes like hot coals. They snarled, their breath smelling of sulfur and ozone, their numbers easily in the dozens. Panic, cold and sharp, threatened to grip the group. Issei summoned his boosted gear, its red glow a lonely beacon in the gloom. Zenobia and Irina drew their holy swords, their faces grim masks of resolve. His goal is to wear us down before he even appears, Rias analyzed, her crimson demonic power flaring around her hands. We need to hold a defensive line. A defensive line will break, Naruto stated, his voice cutting through the rising tension. All eyes turned to him. He stood at their center, his golden eyes scanning the approaching horde, his expression one of intense, unwavering focus. He was not a warrior preparing for a desperate struggle, he was a master craftsman surveying his tools. We will not defend, we will attack, but we will do it together. He turned first to Kiba. Your swords are fast, but they lack the weight to destroy these creatures efficiently. He extended a finger, and a minuscule wisp of his own energy, a perfect balance of black and white, shot into Kiba's body. Use that. Envision not just a blade, but a blade that unravels what it touches. The principles of yin and yang, creation and nothingness. Kiba gasped as the energy spread through him. He instinctively activated his sacred gear. Sword birth. Dozens of demonic swords erupted from the ground as usual, but they were different. Each blade was now edged with a fine, shimmering black and white line. They felt more absolute. Next, Naruto faced Akeno. Your holy lightning is powerful, but your two halves are at war. It costs you too much to wield it. He raised his hand, palm open. The air itself seemed to answer his call. A sphere of pure, crackling natural energy, the lightning of a true storm cloud, formed above his palm. Do not draw on your heritage. Draw on this. Let nature be your source, not your blood. Akeno stared at the sphere, her eyes wide. She tentatively reached out with her own magic, and the moment it connected, she felt a surge of power so clean and potent it made her gasp. The constant, gnawing conflict within her soul was silenced, replaced by the simple, roaring harmony of the storm. A genuine, unforced smile graced her lips. This is incredible. He glanced at Zenobia and Irina. Your blades are the sharpest weapons we have against these beasts. Lead the charge. Do not hesitate. I will not let you be overwhelmed. Finally, he looked at Issei and Asia. You two are the core. Issei, you need time to boost your power. Asia, your healing is our safety net. A single truth-seeking orb detached from his back and floated between them. It expanded, flattening into a wide, translucent black disk that hovered over their heads like a protective shield. Stay under this. Nothing will touch you here. Issei, begin. Boost. The familiar sound was a starting gun. Rias, seeing Naruto's flawless assessment and strategic assignments, felt a surge of confidence. She took her place as the field commander. Kiba, create a perimeter. Akeno, ranged support. Zenobia, Irina, with me. We charge the left flank. The battle began. It was not the desperate melee Kokobile had intended. It was a symphony of destruction. Zenobia, A's Durandal and Irina's Excalibur mimic tore through the Cerberus hounds, their holy power searing through demonic flesh. When they were swarmed, a perfectly aimed bolt of Akino's enhanced lightning would strike from above, clearing a path. The lightning was no longer just yellow, it was a brilliant, blinding white, striking with the fury of a natural disaster. Kiba's new swords erupted from the ground, not just piercing the beasts, but causing their magical forms to decay and unravel upon contact. Naruto himself did not move from his position near Issei and Asia. He was the anchor, his presa. A silent promise that the line would not break. When a Cerberus managed to slip through the coordinated assault, a black rod would shoot from Naruto's back, impaling the beast and turning it to dew. Saint before it could get within 20 feet of the group's core. From his throne of dark energy in the sky, Kokobile watched, his amusement curdling into annoyance. His shock troops were being dismantled with terrifying efficiency. The power flowing from the group below was harmonious, amplified. It all stemmed from the white-haired anomaly who was just standing there. Insolent insects, he roared, his patience gone. Let's see how you handle a real pet. He raised his hands. The ground in the center of the field buckled violently. 3 fissures, far larger than the others, tore open. From each, a colossal Cerberus emerged, each the size of a house, their 9 heads roaring in unison, shaking the very foundations of the pocket dimension. Their power dwarfed that of the lesser beasts, a suffocating wave of demonic pressure. The tide of the battle turned instantly. Xenovia swung Durandal, and the blade bounced off the massive creature's hide with a deafening clang. Akino's lightning struck, only slightly charring its fur. The 3 titans began to advance, their 9 heads breathing torrents of shadow fire that forced the alliance to scatter. Fall back, Rias shouted, erecting a shish. Yield of demonic energy that sizzled and cracked under the onslaught. We can't fight them head-on. The line was breaking. The synergy was shattered by sheer, overwhelming power. And then, a light pierced the artificial night. It was a streak of pure, brilliant white, descending from the highest point of the magic circle like a meteor. It moved with impossible speed, slamming into the center of the field with an impact that sent a shockwave of displaced air across the battlefield. When the light faded, a figure stood in the crater, clad in pristine white draconic armor, 10 metallic wings of light unfurled behind him. Divide. A voice, mechanical and divine, boomed from the armor. The massive Cerberus on the left, which had been about to bite Kiba in half, suddenly shrank, its power visibly draining away. One of the armored figure's wings glowed, and the stolen energy was vented harmlessly into the sky. Divide. 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 In a matter of seconds, the figure blurred between the 3 colossal beasts. The call of his sacred gear echoing with each movement. The overwhelming power of the 3 titans was siphoned away, stolen in great, greedy gulps until the house-sized monsters were no larger or more threatening than the mongrels they had already defeated. With a final, contemptuous blast of white demonic energy, the armored warrior vaporized all 3 of them. He landed softly, his armor retracting with a hiss of steam to reveal a silver-haired young man with an arrogant smirk. Valley Lucifer. Kokobile stared from his throne, his jaw slack with outrage. Valley, what is the meaning of this? This is my war. Valley didn't even glance at him. He dismissed the powerful fallen angel as one might dismiss a buzzing fly. His entire attention, his piercing blue eyes, were fixed on one person, Naruto. He had felt the primordial power from afar, a siren's song for his battle-hungry soul. Now, seeing it in person, he felt a thrill so profound it was almost euphoric. You, Valley said, his voice ringing with absolute certainty. You're the one. He took a step forward, his aura, a colossal, predatory pressure that dwarfed Kokobile's, washing over the field. I've been searching for an opponent worthy of my power. A true monster, a god. I can feel it from you. The power of the beginning. He grinned, a sharp, feral expression of pure joy. Fight me. Enraged at being so utterly ignored, Kokobile descended, his 10 wings beating the air into submission. How dare you interrupt me, boy? This is my stage. I will kill you both. Valley sighed, an exaggerated, theatrical sound of sheer boredom. He didn't even turn to face Kokobile. You're loud, and weak. Your war is pathetic. He then looked back at Naruto, his eyes gleaming. He's all yours. A warm-up, perhaps. The Our disdain finally broke Kokobeel's sanity. With a scream of pure, undiluted rage, he charged, not at Valley, but at Naruto, the perceived source of his humiliation. But Valley was faster. He appeared in Kokobeel's path, his fist cocked back. "You're in my way." He punched the Kadri-class fallen angel in the stomach. There was no grand explosion, just a sickening crunch. Kokobeel folded, the air driven from his lungs, his eyes wide with shocked pain. Valley then spun, delivering a devastating axe kick that sent the fallen angel hurtling into the ground, embedding him in a deep, spider-webbed crater. Ali cracked his knuckles and turned back to Naruto, his expression unchanged. "Now then, where were we?" Naruto watched the exchange, his calm demeanor finally showing a flicker of interest. This boy, Valley, was on another level entirely from the others. His power was immense, his speed breathtaking. He was a true rival. "You seek a battle?" Naruto asked, his own power beginning to rise to meet Valley's. The air around him shimmering with golden light. "I seek the ultimate battle," Valley corrected, his body beginning to glow with the light of his sacred gear. "A fight that will shake the foundations of the world. Show me your power. God of the Void, Balance Breaker, Divine Dividing Scale Male." Valley was once again encased in his draconic armor. He shot forward, a white comet aimed at Naruto's heart. Naruto didn't move, he simply allowed his own power to flare. The markings on his coat glowed, and his 9 truth-seeking orbs spun into a defensive wall before him. Valley's fist, glowing with the power to divide and absorb anything it touched, slammed into the central orb. The world went white and silent. There was no sound, no explosion, just a titanic collision of two absolute concepts. The power to diminish all things versus the power that could negate all things. A shockwave of pure, colorless energy erupted from the point of impact. The ground for a mile in every direction was pulverized into dust. The black magic circle Kokobeel had cast over the sky shattered like glass, revealing the true night sky above. Everyone else, Rias, Akeno, Xenovia, even the half-conscious Kokobeel, was sent tumbling. Their magical barriers offering little resistance to the raw, conceptual force. The two opponents stood locked in a stalemate, a sphere of roiling energy, half gold and half white, crackling between them. Valley's fist pressed against the truth-seeking orb, neither giving an inch. Inside his helmet, Valley was laughing. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated ecstasy. "Yes, this is it. This is the power I've been searching for." He poured more energy into his attack, but the black orb didn't crack. It didn't even tremble. It simply existed, denying his power its very purpose. With a final surge, they both pushed and were thrown back. They landed on opposite sides of the newly formed crater, the very air between them humming like a plucked string. Valley deactivated his armor, breathing a little heavily but smiling from ear to ear. Incredible, truly incredible, but a pity. He glanced around at the ruined school grounds, the terrified devils and exorcists. "This stage is far too small for a dance between us." He looked back at Naruto, his gaze filled with a predator's promise. "Get rid of this trash. Grow stronger. When you are ready for a real battle, I will find you. And then, the heavens themselves will tremble." With a final, respectful nod, Valley unfurled his wings and vanished in a streak of white light, leaving a stunned silence in his wake. All eyes turned to the crater, where Kokobeel was pulling himself from the rubble. He was bleeding, battered, and utterly broken, not just physically, but spiritually. His grand war, his moment of glory, had been hijacked and turned into a mere footnote. I am Kokobeel," he screamed, his voice a ragged, desperate shriek. "I will not be forgotten. I will not be ignored." He gathered the fallen Excalibur fragments with his magic, fusing them together in a desperate, final act. They twisted into a grotesque, pulsating mockery of a holy sword, leaking contradictory energies. With the last of his strength, he roared and charged at Naruto. The only remaining target for his boundless rage. Naruto watched him come, his expression turning cold. The time for games was over. He raised his right hand, palm up. A small, dense ball of black and purple chakra spun to life above it, a tailed beast bomb. But he didn't fire it. He began to compress it. The massive sphere of destructive energy, which could normally level a mountain, shrank. And shrank. And shrank. The pressure and energy contained within the ever smaller point became exponentially more intense, until all that was left was a tiny, silent, black bead, no larger than a marble, hovering over his index finger. It radiated no heat, no light, only an aura of absolute finality. As Kokubile swung his malformed sword, Naruto moved. He vanished in a flicker of speed, reappearing directly in front of the fallen angel, inside his guard. He gently placed his finger on Kokubile's chest, the tiny black bead touching the fabric of his clothes. "It's over," Naruto said quietly. He released the compression. There was no sound. There was no earth-shattering boom. There was only a silent flash of pure, white light, perfectly contained within a 1-meter sphere around Kokubile. For a single, infinitesimal moment, the fallen angel's form was visible as a black silhouette against an internal sun. And then, he was gone. The light vanished. Kokubile had been vaporized, erased from existence. The fused Excalibur sword clattered to the ground, its wielder gone, and shattered into its component pieces. Naruto stood in the calm epicenter of where his enemy had just been. He hadn't even mussed his coat. The precision, the control, the sheer, effortless lethality of the act was 1,000 times more terrifying than any mountain-leveling explosion. Just as the last of Kokubile's demonic energy faded from the world, a half-dozen magic circles blazed to life on the field. From one, the regal form of Seer's Lucifer emerged, his expression grim. From another, a projection of the seraph Michael shimmered into existence, his face etched with concern. And from a third, the trench-coated leader of the fallen angels, Azazel, appeared, a curious, analytical look in his eyes. They had all been drawn by the titanic clash of power between Naruto and Valley. They arrived to a scene of absolute devastation, the remnants of a small army, the shattered holy swords. And a group of exhausted teenagers standing in awe and terror before the white-haired being who had just executed a cadre-class leader without leaving so much as a scorch mark on the ground. Naruto met the gazes of the 3 most powerful beings in this world, his own golden eyes calm and steady. He was no longer just a powerful anomaly. He was a new pillar of this world, and its leaders had come to reckon with him. Chapter 4 End. Chapter 5. The Devil King and the Seraph's Gaze. The athletic field of Kuo Academy had become an impromptu summit for the rulers of the supernatural world. The air, still heavy with the lingering ozone of obliterated magic, crackled with a new kind of tension, political, not martial. Seer's Lucifer, the Crimson Satan, stood with the relaxed posture of a man in absolute control. Yet his wine-red eyes were fixed on Naruto with an intensity that betrayed a deep, analytical caution. Azazel, the Governor-General of the Fallen Angels, lounged against a chunk of upturned earth. His expression one of boundless, almost giddy, scientific curiosity. Hovering between them was the luminous projection of the seraph Michael, his handsome face a portrait of serene concern. Though the light of his aura seemed to dim ever so slightly in Naruto's profound presence. Rias and her peerage, along with the 2 shell-shocked exorcists, stood a respectful distance away, realizing they were now merely witnesses to a conversation between titans. It was Seer's who spoke first, his voice smooth and powerful, carrying easily across the cratered field. "I must thank you. You have dispatched a dangerous traitor and prevented a war that none of our factions desired. For that, the underworld is in your debt." His gaze flickered to the shattered fragments of Excalibur. "And, it seems, you have done heaven a service as well." "Indeed," Michael's voice resonated, warm and clear as a bell. "Your actions, while extreme, have averted a great catastrophe. On behalf of my brothers and sisters, I extend our gratitude." Azazel just chuckled, pushing himself up. "Gratitude is all well and good, but I'm more interested in the how. That little spat between you and Valley put out more energy than the final battle of the Great War. My sensors are still screaming. So, let's cut the pleasantries. Who, or what, are you?" All 3 leaders looked at him, their expressions varied but their question the same. It was the question Rias had asked, now posed by beings who could unmake nations with a thought. Naruto met their collective gaze without flinching. Lying was pointless. Obfuscation would only breed suspicion. The truth, however strange, was his only real weapon here. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki," he began, his voice calm and even. "I am not from this world. I was Br. Ought here by the culmination of a war in my own dimension. In that war, I became the vessel for a primordial power, a being you might call a god, though it was never worshipped. He paused, letting the impossible statement settle. I have no desire for conquest. I did not ask for this power, but it is mine to bear. My only wish is to live in peace and protect those who have shown me kindness. His words were simple, direct, and utterly sincere. There was no arrogance in his tone, no hidden agenda they could detect. He spoke of possessing the power of a god with the same weary resignation one might use to describe a chronic illness. It was this, more than anything, that seemed to convince them. A being with his level of power claiming to want peace was either a masterful liar or a profound anomaly. Given the power he'd just displayed, they suspected the latter. A being from another world, Azazel mused, stroking his chin. Jinchuriki, for a god, fascinating. That would explain why. Our energy signature is unlike anything in our cosmology. It's not demonic, not holy, not draconic, it's just pure. A peaceful existence may be harder to find than you imagine, Sirzex warned, his expression turning serious. A power like yours cannot be hidden. It will draw challenges. It will attract those who wish to control it, and those who wish to destroy it. Your battle with Valley Lucif has already announced your presence to the world. I do not seek challenges, Naruto replied. But I will not run from them. It was then that Michael's projection flickered, and a new figure materialized beside him. She was a woman of breathtaking beauty, with long, flowing blonde hair, gentle green eyes, and 12 radiant wings of pure white light that seemed to hum with a celestial choir. Her presence was one of overwhelming kindness and purity, a stark contrast to the raw, untamed divinity that radiated from Naruto. She was the seraph Gabriel, the most beautiful woman in heaven. Michael, she said, her voice like wind chimes and honey. I felt the disturbance, and this presence. Her gentle eyes fell upon Naruto, and they widened in wonder. She saw not a monster or a threat, but a being of immense, unblemished light. It was a divine energy, but it was not the orderly, structured light of heaven. It was the chaotic, vibrant, life-giving light of a star being born. It felt alien, yet strangely, wonderfully pure. Michael smiled gently at her. Sister, this is Naruto Uzumaki, our unexpected benefactor. He then turned his projected gaze to Naruto. Gabriel is heaven's chief observer and messenger. I have tasked her with being our official envoy to you. It is my hope that through communication, we can foster understanding instead of conflict. Gabriel stepped forward, our bare feet hovering just above the ruined earth. She bowed her head gracefully. It is an honor to meet you, Naruto-sama. Your light is unlike any I have ever known. Naruto was taken aback, not by her beauty, though it was undeniable, but by the utter lack of fear or suspicion in her eyes. She looked at him with a genuine, unclouded curiosity, a purity of spirit that he hadn't encountered since, ever. There is no need for Sama, he said, a hint of his old, awkward charm surfacing for a moment. Just Naruto is fine. The tense summit began to wind down. An agreement was reached. The three factions would treat Naruto as a neutral, independent power. They would not act against him, on the condition that he did not act against them. The fragments of Excalibur were handed over to Michael's care. Zenobia and Irina, their mission a catastrophic failure and their faith in tatters, were left in a state of limbo. Seeing their despair, Naruto spoke to them. Your leaders lied to you. Your world is not what you thought it was. But your desire to protect people was real. That is a truth that does not require a god to validate it. Zenobia looked up at him, her hard exterior completely broken. But what do we do now? We have nothing. We are nothing. You are warriors, Naruto countered. And you are free. That is not nothing. He glanced at Rias. Perhaps they can find a new purpose here. Rias, seeing the opportunity, immediately offered them a place in her peerage. After a moment of hesitation, Zenobia, pragmatic to the core, accepted. She saw in Naruto a power far more real and trustworthy than the crumbling institution she had once served. Irina, however, was torn, her cheerful personality struggling against her existential crisis. She tearfully asked for time to think, a request Rias graciously granted. As a final act of goodwill before the leaders departed, Naruto turned to the devastated school grounds. He took a deep breath, and the air around him grew thick with life energy. He clapped his hands together, then slammed his palms on the ground. Wood style. Grand rebirth. It was not a jutsu. It was a declaration. The earth trembled, and from every crater and fissure, smooth, clean wood erupted. It was not a violent explosion, but a controlled, impossibly fast reconstruction. The cratered field leveled itself out, fresh green grass sprouting instantly. The shattered sections of the school building rebuilt themselves, plank by plank, window by window, until the entire academy stood pristine and perfect under the moonlight, as if the battle had never happened. The display of casual, large-scale creation left everyone, including the faction leaders, speechless. It was one thing to hear about his power. It was another to watch him rebuild a small mountain of infrastructure in under a minute with less effort than it took them to teleport. Searsex and Azazel departed with thoughtful, calculating looks, leaving with far more questions than answers. Before Michael's projection faded, he turned to Naruto, his expression growing somber. "A word of warning, Naruto Uzumaki," the seraph said, his voice low. "My sister's heart is pure, and she sees the good in all things. But not all of my brethren share her view." Naruto's golden eyes narrowed slightly. "The ones who sent the exorcist, freed." Michael nodded grimly. "There is a growing faction within the Seraphim, led by a traditionalist named Shamhaza. He believes my leadership is too soft, that our truce with the other factions is a betrayal of God's will. They see powerful anomalies, unique sacred gears, beings like yourself, not as wonders, but as flaws in the system that must be purged to maintain divine order. They were the ones who secretly empowered Freed. They were the ones who sent the order for the exorcists to test you. Be wary. Your greatest enemy may not be a devil or a fallen angel, but those who claim to serve the light." With that final, ominous warning, Michael and Gabriel's light faded, leaving them alone on the newly restored field. The immediate crisis was over, but the world had irrevocably shifted. Rias, Akeno, Zenobia, they all looked at Naruto differently now. The power dynamic had been permanently defined. He was not a member of their group, he was its center of gravity. Later that night, Rias found Naruto standing alone in the new garden he had made for Kaneko, staring up at the moon. The affection she felt for him, once a mixture of curiosity and strategic interest, was now something deeper, more real. "They will all be watching you now," she said softly, coming to stand beside him. "The Satans, the Seraphs, the Gregory. You're the most important piece on the board." "I don't want to be a piece in anyone's game," he replied, not taking his eyes off the sky. "You don't have a choice," she said. "But you don't have to be alone." She reached out, her fingers gently taking his hand. His skin was warm, vibrant with energy. "You have a place here. With us. With me." At the same time, in the kitchen, Akeno was preparing tea, her thoughts a whirlwind. His words to her about accepting her whole self echoed in her mind. He had seen her pain, her deepest secret, and had not judged her. He had offered her not pity, but acceptance. The seductive mask she wore with everyone else felt cheap and useless with him. For the first time, she felt a desire not just to tease a man, but to connect with him, a prospect that was both thrilling and terrifying. She wanted to explore this strange, new feeling, this dangerous hope that had taken root in her heart. The battle for Kuo Academy was over, but the consequences were just beginning to unfold. Naruto had allies in the highest echelons of power, the beginnings of a new, powerful family, and sincere affection of more than one beautiful woman. But he also had a new, insidious enemy, hiding in the celestial realms, who saw him not as a savior, but as a blasphemy that had to be erased. Chapter 5 End. Chapter 6. The Valkyrie's Contract and the Yukai's Dance. A week of quiet descended upon Kuo, a peace so profound it felt like the world was holding its breath. Zenobia had begun sparring with Kiba, their blades clashing in a dance of demonic speed and holy power that pushed both warriors to their limits. Asia, under Naruto's gentle tutelage, was learning to feel the flow of life energy, her healing abilities growing more confident and intuitive. Kaneko now spent most of her afternoons in the small garden, often with Naruto sitting silently on the other side of the pond, their read silence a comfortable language of its own. It was a fragile, precious semblance of normalcy. The normalcy shattered on a Tuesday. It did not begin with a warning or a summons. It began with the I.R. in the occult research club room growing heavy and cold, the light from the windows dimming as if eclipsed. An intricate, glowing green magic circle, vast and complex, covered the entire ceiling. It was composed not of demonic script, but of harsh, angular runes that hummed with an ancient, warlike power. Norse magic, Rias breathed, her hand instinctively flaring with crimson energy. And on a massive scale, from the center of the circle, a figure descended in a column of emerald light. It was a woman, tall and striking, dressed in a severe yet elegant uniform of gray and lavender that resembled a magical girl's outfit designed by a drill sergeant. Her silver lilac hair was braided neatly, and her sharp, intelligent eyes, framed by glasses, scanned the room with a mixture of professional duty and high-strung anxiety. In her hand, she held a long staff topped with a crystal that pulsed in time with the runes above. "I am Rosweiss, Valkyrie in service to the All-Father, Odin-sama," she announced. Her voice crisp and formal, though a slight tremor betrayed her nerves. "I come with a message for the being known as Naruto Uzumaki." All eyes turned to Naruto, who had not risen from his seat on the couch. His expression one of mild curiosity. Rosweiss cleared her throat, clearly steeling herself. "Odin-sama, the great god of Northern Europe and Lord of Asgard, has taken notice of your recent activities. He is most intrigued. He extends an invitation for you to accompany me to the Asgardian embassy for a conference. The invitation is, of course, non-negotiable." The last three words hung in the air, a clear and undeniable threat veiled in diplomatic language. Naruto's placid expression didn't change. "I don't recall applying for a conference. I'm busy." Rosweiss's professional composure cracked for a second. "Be busy. This is a summons from the All-Father himself. It is not a request you can simply decline." "Watch me," Naruto replied, his tone still mild. He had spent his entire life fighting against being ordered around, against being treated as a tool or a weapon. He was not about to start taking orders from some unseen All-Father. The Valkyrie's face hardened, her anxiety replaced by a flicker of warrior's pride. "Odin-sama anticipated you might be uncooperative. He authorized me to use any means necessary to ensure your compliance." The crystal on her staff flared to life. "I would prefer not to damage this building, but my orders are absolute." Naruto sighed and stood up. "All right, but not here. You'll ruin the garden." He vanished from the room, reappearing on the school's athletic field, the same place he had fought Kokobile. A moment later, Rosweiss appeared in a flash of green light, her expression a mixture of surprise at his speed and grim determination. The members of the ORC followed via a Gremory magic circle, forming a protective ring, ready to intervene. "I am Odin-sama's strongest Valkyrie," Rosweiss declared, her staff now glowing with immense power. "I am a master of hundreds of forms of Northern European magic. Do not underestimate me." "I don't underestimate anyone," Naruto said. "But you are making a mistake." She didn't wait for another word. With a guttural cry in Old Norse, she thrust her staff forward. A blizzard erupted from the tip, not of snow, but of razor-sharp shards of magical ice, each imbued with a freezing curse. The temperature of the air plummeted, and the wave of ice shards screamed towards Naruto, large enough to flash freeze the entire field. Naruto simply raised his hand. He didn't create a shield or a counter spell. He focused on the heat that was already in the air, the latent thermal energy of the atmosphere. With a pulse of his will, he caused the air in front of him to superheat. The wave of cursed ice crashed into the wall of invisible, shimmering heat and was instantly vaporized, turning into a massive cloud of harmless steam. Rosweiss's eyes widened behind her glasses. That wasn't a defensive spell. He had altered the battlefield's very properties to negate her attack. Undeterred, she changed tactics. She stamped her staff on the ground, and a dozen runes flared to life around Naruto, trapping him in a cage of green light. Binding art of 100 chains. From the runes, magical chains of solid energy shot out, seeking to ensnare him. Before they could even touch him, Naruto took a single, deep breath. He didn't just inhale air, he drew in the natural energy of the world. He then exhaled, and a wave of pure, potent sage energy rolled out from him. The complex Norse runes, unable to withstand the sheer purity of the energy, shattered like glass. The chains dissolved into nothing. Your magic is powerful, Naruto observed, his voice calm. But it's just a script. A set of commands you force upon the world. You aren't working with nature. You're shouting at it. Frustration and a hint of fear now entered Roswice's eyes. She flew into the air, her staff gathering a maelstrom of wind and lightning. This was her ultimate attack, a spell that mimicked the destructive power of a hurricane. Then let's see you reason with this. Gingnur Cyclone, a massive tornado, filled with crackling spears of lightning, descended upon him. Naruto watched it come, unimpressed. He reached out with his senses, feeling the currents of wind, the flow of electrical charge. He didn't fight the storm. He guided it. With a simple, fluid gesture of his hand, as if conducting an orchestra, he took control of the tornado. The howling winds obeyed his will, the lightning redirecting at his command. He spun the cyclone around, faster and faster, and then, with a sharp, downward motion, he inverted it, forcing the entire storm back towards its caster. Roswice cried out in shock as her own ultimate spell, now more powerful and focused than before, shot back up at her. She tried to disperse it, but her control was gone. It was his now. The tornado enveloped her, not to shred her, but to trap her in a howling vortex of her own making. Naruto then clapped his hands. The tornado instantly vanished. The wind died. The lightning dissipated. Roswice, her magical energy completely exhausted, dropped from the sky. Naruto blurred forward, catching her easily before she hit the ground. He set her down gently, her legs giving way as she knelt on the grass, panting from exertion and shock. "You are strong, Valkyrie," Naruto said, his voice holding genuine respect. "But your all-father sent you on a fool's errand." Before she could reply, a booming, boisterous laugh echoed across the field. A massive Norse rune circle, 10 times more intricate than Roswice's, blazed to life. From it strode an old man with a long white beard, a patch over one eye, and a mischievous glint in the other. He was dressed in surprisingly casual clothes and radiated an aura of ancient, immense power. It was Odin. Ha 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 ha. Magnificent. Truly magnificent. The old god bellowed, clapping his hands. To unravel a Valkyrie's magic like that. Azazel told me you were interesting, but he undersold you. He completely ignored his defeated, humiliated subordinate and walked right up to the girls of the ORC. His one good eye twinkling. And these must be your lovely companions. A pleasure to meet such fine examples of youthful beauty. Roswice looked up, mortified. "Oh Odin-sama, I failed. Nonsense. My dear Roswice," Odin boomed without looking at her. "You were an excellent test. Showed me everything I needed to see." His gaze lingered on Akeno and Rias F. Or a moment too long before a small communication rune glowed on his wrist. He held it up to his ear. "What's that, Azazel?" "A new shipment of that rare Junmai Daiginjo from the human world. And Ishtar is there." "Say no more." He turned. His demeanor suddenly hurried. "Apologies, everyone. Urgent godly business to attend to. Can't be helped." He opened another portal and strode towards it. "Odin-sama, wait," Roswice cried, scrambling to her feet. "My report. My next assignment." Odin paused at the edge of the portal and looked back as if just remembering she was there. "Oh. Right, you. Just wait here for a bit. I'll send for you, eventually." And with that, he stepped through the portal, which snapped shut behind him, leaving a stunned and utterly abandoned Valkyrie in its wake. Roswice stood frozen for a long moment. Then her shoulders began to shake. A single, choked sob escaped her lips. Her all-father, the god she had dedicated her entire life to serving, had used her as a disposable litmus test and then abandoned her in a foreign land for the sake of some liquor. The humiliation was a crushing weight. She collapsed to her knees, tears of professional and personal ruin streaming down her face. "Fired. Stranded. My grandmother was right, I'll never find a good position," she wailed, her formal demeanor completely gone. The members of the ORC stared, unsure of what to do. It was Naruto who stepped forward. He knelt in front of the weeping Valkyrie and offered her a hand. "He does not deserve your loyalty," he said, his voice quiet but firm. Roswice looked up, her vision blurry with tears. "But serving him was my life. I'm a Valkyrie. What else can I do? You are a powerful and knowledgeable magic user, Naruto stated. Your skill is your own, not his. My friends and I, we are new to this world's complexities. We could use someone with your expertise. He offered a small, sincere smile. I am not looking for a servant. I am offering you a position as an advisor. A comrade. A friend. His offer hung in the air. It wasn't a contract of servitude. It was a proposal of mutual respect. He was offering her not a master, but a family. For Rosweiss, who had only ever known the rigid hierarchy of Asgard, the idea was revolutionary. She looked at his offered hand, then at his kind, golden eyes, and saw not a conqueror, but a protector. With a trembling hand, she took his. Later that evening, as the group was trying to acclimate a still sniffling but grateful Rosweiss to the clubhouse, another, more familiar magic circle appeared. Sears X Lucifer stepped through, his usual calm expression replaced by one of grave concern. Forgive the intrusion, he said, his eyes immediately finding Naruto. A dire situation has arisen, and I believe you are the only one who can resolve it without sparking a full-scale war. He explained the situation. The Yokai of Japan, a powerful and historically neutral faction, were centered in the ancient capital of Kyoto. Their leader, a beautiful and powerful nine-tailed fox named Yusaka, had been abducted. Her young daughter, Kuno, had used a secret communication channel to beg the devils for help. The perpetrators are a human faction. Sears X continued, his tone grim. They call themselves the Hero Faction, descendants of legendary heroes from across history, led by a wielder of one of the true Longinus spears. They are allied with the Chaos Brigade. They seem to want to use Yusaka's immense life force to power some kind of magical weapon. Why not send your own forces? Rias asked her brother. An army of devils marching on Kyoto would be seen as an invasion by the other pantheons, Sears X explained. It would shatter the peace. But you, he said, his gaze locking onto Naruto, you are a neutral entity. A god from another world. Your intervention would be seen as aid, not conquest. Kuno is waiting in Kyoto. She specifically asked for the one who defeated Kokobile. Please, Naruto, will you help them? Naruto looked around at his growing, chaotic family. Rias, the proud devil heiress. Akano, the conflicted priestess of thunder. Kiba and Zenobia, the holy sword masters. Kaneko, the quiet Nekomata. Asia, the gentle healer. And now Rosweiss, the abandoned Valkyrie. They were all outcasts, misfits who had found a home together. A child had lost her mother and was asking for his help. There was only one possible answer. We're going to Kyoto. The journey was made via a special, high-speed train arranged by Sears X, which traveled through a dimensional gap directly to a hidden station beneath the Yokai capital. When they emerged, the air itself felt different. The natural energy here was thick, ancient, and vibrant, humming with a power that Kuo Town lacked. Naruto felt it instantly, a comforting thrum that resonated deep within his soul. This place felt alive. They were met by a contingent of fox-masked Yokai guards, who led them to a grand, traditional temple at the heart of the city. There, sitting alone on the steps, was a small girl with blonde hair, dressed in a child's kimono, with small, fluffy fox ears atop her head and a single, swaying fox tail behind her. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying, but she held herself with a regal bravery that defied her age. This was Kuno. She looked up at their approaching group, her gaze passing over the devils and the Valkyrie before landing on Naruto. She felt his energy, not as a threat, but as an immense, overwhelming forest. Ancient, powerful, and strangely safe. Are you the one? She asked, her voice small but clear. Are you the sage who can save my mother? Naruto walked forward and knelt before the small girl, his golden eyes meeting hers. He saw in her the same desperate loneliness he had felt his entire life. He placed a gentle hand on her head. I am, he said, his voice a soft, unbreakable promise. And I will bring your mother home. Surrounded by his companions in the heart of a city of spirits. Under the watchful eyes of an ancient and worried people, Naruto prepared to face a new enemy. He was not just a protector of Kuo Town anymore, he was becoming a force for balance in the entire supernatural world. Chapter 6 End. Chapter 7. The Sage and the Nine-Tailed Fox. Kyoto was a city of two faces. By day, It was a tapestry of tourists and tradition, ancient temples standing serene beside bustling modern streets. By night, another world awoke. The spaces between the shrines, the shadows of the Gion district, hummed with the energy of yokai. It was in this hidden world that Naruto and his companions began their hunt. Their base of operations was the Grand Yokai Temple, where Kuno, now Naruto's self-appointed shadow, rarely left his side. He saw the ghost of his own childhood in her, a child forced into a position of leadership by tragedy, trying to mask her fear with a brave face. He spoke to her not as a god or a warrior, but simply as a friend, listening to her stories about her mother. Sharing silly jokes, and occasionally creating small, glowing animals out of pure energy to make her laugh. The simple act of providing comfort to the lonely child centered him, reminding him of the core reason he fought, to protect smiles like hers. The investigation was a frustrating crawl. The hero faction had hidden themselves well, their magical signatures masked by powerful concealment barriers. Rossweiss, her analytical mind a potent new asset, studied the faint residual energy they'd left behind. It's a complex weave, she explained, pushing her glasses up her nose. Human-based magic, yes, but amplified. There are traces of something else. Something holy, but corrupted. It feels familiar, like a distorted echo of an angelic blessing. While the mages worked, Issei grew increasingly agitated. He watched Kiba and Zenobia move like ghosts through the city on reconnaissance missions. He saw Rias and Akino directing the yokai search parties with tactical precision. He saw Naruto, the calm, unshakable center of it all, commanding the respect of an entire faction without even trying. And he felt like a spare part. His boosted gear required time to become truly powerful, making him a liability in a fast-moving search. He found Naruto late one night, sitting on the temple steps overlooking the city lights, with Kuno asleep beside him, her head resting on his lap. "This sucks," Issei blurted out, slumping down on the step below. "I'm useless. Everyone's out there being a badass, and I'm just here." The perverted comic relief with the talking glove. Naruto looked down at him, his golden eyes reflecting the city. "Do you think I was born this way?" The question caught Issei off guard. "What? You're a god. You came here with all this power." "No," Naruto said, his voice quiet. "I was born an orphan. The entire village hated me for a monster sealed inside me. I was a loud-mouthed loser who couldn't even make a proper clone. Every scrap of power I ever gained, I had to fight for. I had to bleed for it." He looked at Issei, and for the first time, Issei saw not a deity, but a fellow outcast. "I see the way you look at Rias, at Asia, at all of them. You'd throw yourself in front of a god-killing spear for any one of them without a second's hesitation. You don't do it for glory or for power. You do it because you can't stand to see them hurt." "He's right, partner." Diedrag's voice boomed from the gauntlet, startlingly sincere. "Your drive is what unlocks my power. Not the other way around. Your power isn't in your first punch, Issei," Naruto continued, a small, genuine smile touching his lips. "It's in your 10th. It's in getting back up after you've been knocked down 9 times. Your strength isn't about being the strongest in the room. It's about your unwavering will to protect. That is a power that can't be measured. Don't ever think that's useless." The words hit Issei harder than any physical blow. It wasn't a lecture or a pep talk. It was a statement of respect, from one man to another. A fire lit in Issei's eyes, a new resolve hardening his features. He wasn't Naruto, and he never would be. But he was Issei Kyoto. And he would protect his friends. The breakthrough came the next day. A yokai patrol engaged a lone member of the hero faction, a massive, brawny man identified as Hercules. The ensuing battle was short. Kiba and Zenobia arrived as backup, and their combined speed and power overwhelmed him. But during the fight, Hercules had used a strange ability. His sacred gear, variant detonation, created explosions that felt wrong. When he was defeated, Rossweiss examined his discarded equipment. "Here it is again," she murmured, pointing to a faint, almost invisible rune etched into his gauntlet. "This is a forbidden angelic amplification rune. It boosts the power of a sacred gear at the cost of corrupting its energy. This is high-level, restricted magic from the upper echelons of heaven." Shish. Amhaz's faction is not just an internal problem anymore. They are actively arming terrorists. The captured Hercules, under interrogation by Akanos, persuasive methods, revealed the location of our base. A hidden dimensional space anchored beneath the famous Fushimi Inari Shrine, using the thousands of Torii gates as a conduit for the vast amount of natural energy needed to hold Yusaka. The As-Su was planned and executed within the hour. There was no subtlety, no infiltration. They hit the main gate with the force of a tidal wave. The stronghold was a vast, cavernous space, a fusion of cold, metallic architecture and ancient stonework. In the center, on a raised platform, was Yusaka. The beautiful, golden-haired kitsune was bound by thick, black chains etched with runes that pulsed with a sickening light, siphoning her immense Yukai power into a massive, spear-like device hanging above her, the magical weapon Sirzex had mentioned. Surrounding the platform stood the leaders of the hero faction. A beautiful woman with blonde hair in knightly armor, Jean. The massive Hercules, now freed and rearmed. And at their head, a young man with a sharp, intelligent face and a calm, confident demeanor, holding a magnificent golden spear that radiated an aura of absolute truth. Cao Cao, the wielder of the true Longinus. So, the monsters have come to rescue their queen, Cao Cao said, his voice calm, almost conversational. I am Cao Cao, a descendant of the hero of the Three Kingdoms, and like my ancestor, I intend to unite the world for the good of humanity. By kidnapping a mother and threatening to start a war. Rias shot back, her power flaring. Sacrifices are necessary for a greater good, Cao Cao replied coolly. The gods, devils, and monsters have ruled this world from the shadows for too long. It is time for humanity to reclaim its destiny. The battle lines were drawn. The leaders are mine, Naruto stated. The rest of you, free Yusaka. Do not let anyone interfere. With a collective war cry, the orc and the Yukai guards charged. Akanos' holy lightning and Roswice's Norse magic rained from above, while Kiba, Xenovia, and Issei crashed into the hero faction's ranks. It was chaos, a maelstrom of demonic energy, holy power, and human ingenuity. Naruto moved, a white blur of motion, appearing directly before Cao Cao. This is between you and me. Cao Cao simply smiled, as it should be. Their battle began. Cao Cao was not a powerhouse like Valley. He was a genius. He used his spear not as a bludgeon, but as a scalpel. He never met Naruto's overwhelming power head-on. When Naruto attacked with a burst of sage energy, Cao Cao's spear would shift, deflecting the blow with a flick of the wrist. When Naruto used his speed, Cao Cao would anticipate his trajectory, forcing him to change course. Your power is immense, but it is raw, untamed, Cao Cao analyzed as they fought, his spear a blur of gold. You are a force of nature. But even a hurricane can be redirected. He activated his spear's balance breaker. 7 orbs of light appeared, the 7 treasures, each with a different ability. One created an illusionary double, another a powerful defensive barrier, a third a sphere of absolute darkness. He used them in perfect concert, a one-man army against a god. Naruto found himself on the defensive for the first time. The illusions made it difficult to land a blow. The barriers absorbed his attacks. It was a battle of strategy, of wits. And Cao Cao was a master. You see, Cao Cao said, pressing his advantage. This is the strength of humanity. We are not the strongest, or the fastest, but we are the most clever. Cleverness is not wisdom, Naruto replied, his golden eyes narrowing. He stopped trying to attack. He stood still, high. Truth-seeking orbs swirling around him, forming a perfect defensive sphere. He closed his eyes, extending his senses, feeling the flow of energy, the hum of the spear, the subtle shift of the air. He wasn't just watching Cao Cao anymore. He was watching the entire battle, the entire universe around them. He saw an opening, not in Cao Cao's defense, but in his ideology. You claim to fight for humanity, Naruto said, his voice resonating through the cavern. But you ally yourself with the Chaos Brigade, who would see humanity enslaved or destroyed. You use weapons supplied by a corrupt faction of angels. You are not a hero. Cao Cao, you are a pawn, and you are too proud to see it. His words struck a nerve. A flicker of doubt crossed Cao Cao's face. In that infinitesimal moment of hesitation, Naruto acted. He didn't attack. He used his creation of all things ability, not to make something, but to apply a concept. He applied the concept of stillness to the air around the 7 treasure orbs. For a fraction of a second, the orbs froze in place, their connection to Cao Cao momentarily severed. It was all the time he needed. He moved, faster than thought, appearing inside Cao Cao's perfect defense. He didn't aim for the man. He aimed for the spear. He didn't try to break it. He simply placed his hand on the shaft. "Let's see the truth of this spear," he whispered. He poured his own sage energy into the true Longinus. The holy weapon, the slayer of gods, screamed as the raw, untamed power of nature itself flooded its sacred core. The weapon, designed to enforce a specific, divine, truth, was overwhelmed by the infinite, chaotic truth of life itself. The golden light flickered, and the spear fell from Cao Cao's hands, clattering to the floor, its power temporarily neutralized. Cao Cao stared at his empty hands, his face a mask of utter disbelief. He had lost. His perfect weapon, his ultimate truth, had been silenced. Naruto cocked his fist back, but he paused, looking at the defeated, brilliant young man before him. He saw not evil, but misguided conviction. He lowered his hand. "Your cause is not worth the price you are willing to pay." He then turned his back on his defeated foe, his attention going to the main platform. His friends had reached Yasaka. As Kiba and Zenobia shattered the last of the chains, Naruto appeared beside them. He placed a hand on the weakened Kitsune's shoulder, pouring his gentle, life-giving energy into her, stabilizing her exhausted form. Yasaka looked up, her vision blurry. She saw a figure cloaked in white, radiating a power that felt like the birth of a forest. The warmth of the sun, and the depth of the ocean all at once. It was a sage, a true primordial sage, whose power dwarfed her own as a mountain dwarfs a hill. You saved me," she whispered, her voice weak. "Rest now," Naruto said softly. "You're safe." With their leader defeated and their weapon neutralized, the hero faction broke, teleporting away in a desperate retreat. The battle was won. Back at the Yukai Temple, a celebration was underway. But in a quiet room, away from the noise, Naruto watched over Yasaka's recovery. She was now awake and lucid, her strength slowly returning. "I owe you a debt that I can never repay," she said, her voice filled with a profound gratitude. She was a queen, a being of immense power and pride, yet before him, she felt humbled. He had not only saved her, but he had defeated his enemy with wisdom, not just brute force. "There is no debt," he said. "A child asked me to save her mother. That's all that mattered." Yasaka looked at him, at the quiet strength in his golden eyes, at the immense kindness that tempered his godlike power. She was overcome with an emotion that transcended mere gratitude. It was awe, respect, and a powerful, undeniable attraction to the being who embodied the very essence of the natural world she ruled. Slowly, she leaned forward. Naruto, unused to such gestures, remained still. She pressed her lips to his. It was not a kiss of passion, but of deep, profound reverence. A transfer of thanks, of acknowledgement, of an alliance that was now sealed not by politics, but by a bond between two sages. As she pulled away, she saw the shocked faces of Rias and Akino standing in the doorway, their expressions a priceless mixture of jealousy and awe. The group had returned from Kyoto victorious. Naruto had gained a powerful new ally in the Yukai faction and the deep affection of their queen. But the revelation of heaven's treachery cast a long shadow. The ripples of his existence were spreading, and the forces gathering in the darkness were only growing stronger. Chapter 7 End. Chapter 8. The Great Satan and the Angel's Song. The summons came not as a request, but as a fact of reality. A breathtakingly complex magic circle, shimmering with the silver and crimson crest of the House of Gremory, bloomed on the floor of the Occult Research Club. It was not a teleportation gate for Rias's peerage. It was a formal gateway, a royal road to the underworld. Seersex Lucifer himself stepped through, not in his usual casual attire, but in the magnificent, formal robes of the Crimson Satan. His power, usually a placid, lake-like presence, was now a palpable ocean, filling the room with the sheer weight of his authority. "Naruto-kun," he said, his voice holding a respectful but firm tone. "The other Satans have requested a formal audience. They wish to meet the being who has so thoroughly shaken our world. We would be honored if you and your companions would join us in Lilith." It was a royal summons disguised as a polite invitation. Naruto understood the necessity of it. He had proven his power. Now he had to prove his intentions to the rest of the underworld's leadership. With a simple nod, he accepted. The Gremory family's capital city, Lilith, was a breathtaking spectacle of demonic architecture. Soaring obsidian towers scraped a perpetually twilit sky, their peaks lit with crimson and purple flames. It was a world of dark elegance and ancient power. They were escorted to the royal palace, a fortress of polished black marble so vast it seemed to defy physics. The throne room was a cavernous chamber, its ceiling a swirling nebula of captured souls, its floor a mirror-like expanse of obsidian. 4 massive thrones sat upon a raised dais. Searsex took his seat, and the other 3 rulers were already present. A hulking, muscular man with a serious expression, Falbium Asmodeus, who looked half asleep but whose aura was a slumbering volcano. A handsome, green-haired man with a scientist's calculating gaze, Ajuka Beelzebub, who was studying Naruto with an intensity that felt like he was dissecting his very soul. And then there was the 4th. A young woman with long, black hair in pigtails. Dressed in a frilly, pink magical girl outfit complete with a star-tipped wand. She was Seraphal Leviathan, one of the most powerful beings in the underworld. And she was currently squealing with delight. Ooh, so this is the super-strong mystery god Rias Tan wrote me about. He's so cute, and the white hair is so cool and mysterious. She chirped, hopping her throne and zipping over to Naruto with impossible speed. She got right in his face, her sapphire eyes sparkling with hyperactive curiosity. Hi, I'm the magical girl Sarah Tan. It's a super-duper pleasure to meet you. Naruto, who had faced down primordial beasts and god killers, was momentarily thrown off balance by this whirlwind of sugar-coated energy. Rias, standing behind him, looked profoundly annoyed. Seraphal-sama, please show some decorum, she said through gritted teeth. Oh, hush, Rias Tan. This is way more fun. Seraphal giggled, before her expression shifted with startling speed. Her playful smile vanished, replaced by a gaze of keen, sharp-witted intelligence. Her magical girl aura was replaced by the cold, crushing pressure of a Satan. Ajuka's calculations say your power output during the fight with Valley was incalculable. You broke every sensor we have in the human world. I want to know why someone with that kind of power is helping my friend's little sister. The shift was jarring and deliberate. The flighty magical girl was a persona. This was the real Seraphal Leviathan, a cunning, powerful ruler testing him. Your sister offered me a place to stay when I had none, Naruto replied simply. Meeting her gaze, kindness should be repaid. It's that simple. Seraphal's serious expression melted back into a beaming smile. I knew it. You're a good guy. So cool. Before the bizarre meeting could continue, the grand doors of the throne room swung open. A procession of high-ranking devils, lords and ladies from the 72 pillars, strode in. They were the old guard. Their faces etched with pride and ancient arrogance. An elderly devil with the flaming crest of the Phoenix family led them. Searsex, Lord Phoenix began, his voice a gravelly sneer, his eyes ice-missing Naruto and his companions as if they were dirt on the floor. We have tolerated your progressive alliances. We have stomached the presence of dragons and fallen in our world. But this, you bring an unknown, an outsider of immeasurable power, into the heart of our capital and speak of formalizing an alliance. It is an insult to our entire race. This outsider saved my sister's life and prevented a war, Searsex replied. His voice dangerously calm. He is a destabilizing element. Another lord shouted. A monster of unknown origin. Power like his only brings destruction. He is a walking catastrophe. And you are inviting him to sit at our table. The room erupted in dissent, the old guard united in their fear and xenophobia. Naruto listened to it all, his expression unreadable. He had heard these arguments before. In his own world, they were the words of the fearful, the ones who clung to the past and saw every change as a threat. Finally, Lord Phoenix turned his full, contemptuous glare on Naruto. You, monster, whatever you are not welcome here. Leave our world, or we will unite the full might of the 72 pillars and erase you. As he spoke, a small, almost undetectable probe of demonic fire, a signature of the Phoenix clan, shot towards Naruto, meant to test his defenses. Naruto didn't move, he didn't raise a hand. He didn't even look at the approaching flame. He simply let his aura, the barest fraction of his true power, flare for a single, silent instant. The effect was absolute. The probing flame was not blocked or negated, it was snuffed out of existence as if it had never been. The shouting stopped. The air in the vast throne room grew thick and heavy, pressing down on every being present. The captured souls in the ceiling nebula ceased their swirling. The flames lighting the towers outside the windows seemed to dim. Every devil in the room, from the lowest guard to the mighty Seersex, felt a primal, instinctual terror grip them. It was the feeling a mouse gets when a hawk's shadow passes over it. They were in the presence of a predator so far beyond them on the food chain that their very souls screamed at them to submit. The pressure vanished as quickly as it had appeared. Naruto's expression had not changed. He looked at Lord Phoenix, his golden eyes holding no anger, only a profound, unshakable certainty. "I am not your enemy," he said, his voice quiet. Yet it filled the silent hall. "But if you force me to be, you will not like the outcome. I am here by invitation. I have no quarrel with your people. But I will not be threatened. And I am not leaving." Silence. Then, a slow, deliberate clap echoed from the dais. It was Ajuka Beelzebub. "Brilliant," the green-haired Satan said, a look of genuine admiration on his face. "A flawless demonstration of controlled threat. Maximum psychological impact with zero collateral damage. You silenced an entire room of aristocrats without throwing a single punch. I am impressed, Naruto Uzumaki." Lord Phoenix and the other old guard nobles stood frozen, their faces pale, their blustering threats turned to ash in their mouths. They had made a challenge, and the response had been so overwhelming, so utterly dismissive of their power, that it had broken their will. Without another word, they turned and departed, their pride shattered. Seersex let out a slow breath. "Well, that settles that." Seraphal zipped back over to Naruto, her eyes shining with unconcealed adoration. "So cool. You were like, grr, I'm the boss. And they were like, eep, sorry. I'm officially your #1 fan." She threw her arms around his arm, much to Rias's visible fury. With the political theater concluded, a genuine alliance was forged. The underworld would recognize Naruto as a sovereign entity, a friend to the Gremory family. And by extension, the four Satans. Later, in a private guest chamber within the palace, Naruto found himself alone. His companions were being treated to a royal tour by a flustered Graphia. He stood on a balcony overlooking the surreal cityscape of Lilith, feeling the alien energy of this world on his skin. A soft, celestial hum, like the distant ringing of 1,000 tiny bells, alerted him. He turned. A shimmering light coalesced in the center of his room, forming the radiant figure of the seraph Gabriel. She was not in her full 12-winged glory, but a more subdued, 6-winged form. Her expression was not serene, it was fraught with worry. "Gabriel-san," Naruto said, surprised. "Is this an official visit?" "No," she whispered, her voice urgent. He quickly formed a soundproof barrier of holy light around the room. "I have come in secret. To warn you." Her fear was a tangible thing, a stark contrast to her usually peaceful aura. "What is it?" "Shamhaza has made his move," she said. Her hands clenched at her sides. "He used your battle with the hero faction, the proof of his faction's illegal weapons being used, not as a sign of his treachery, but as proof that Michael and I are too weak to control the evils of the world. He has swayed a majority of the Gregory Council. He has accused Michael and me of heresy for consorting with you, what he calls a blasphemous anomaly." The news was dire. The schism Michael had warned him of was becoming a coup. "He is preparing to activate the Metatron Protocol," Gabriel continued, her voice trembling slightly. "It is an ancient, planetary-scale purification system, designed by my father before the Great War. It was meant to be the ultimate defense of heaven, a way to reboot the world by poo. Rging it of all divine energies that did not conform to his system. Shamhaza intends to use it on you. But its power is absolute. If he fires it, it won't just erase you. The resulting shockwave could shatter the balance between our three factions and reignite the Great War." Naruto processed this, his expression grim. This was no longer a shadow war. It was an imminent, world-ending threat. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked, his golden eyes searching hers. You are betraying your own people. Tears welled in Gabriel's gentle eyes. Shamhaz's heaven is not the heaven I love. It is a place of dogma, fear, and hatred of the unknown. That is not what my father intended. That is not the message of love. She looked at him, her gaze filled with a desperate hope. You are different. Your power, it is not born of a system. It is born of life itself. When I am near you, I feel hope. She took a hesitant step closer. I am afraid, Naruto. Afraid of what my own people have become. So I must ask you, what is it you fight for? What gives you the strength to stand against all of this? Naruto looked away, out at the alien sky. He thought of his parents, of Jiraiya, of his friends in Konoha. He thought of Rias, Kaneko, Asia, and all the others who had come to depend on him here. His answer was simple, born from a lifetime of pain and a dream he would never abandon. I fight for a world where people can understand each other without having to hate each other first, he said. A world where a child doesn't have to grow up alone just because they're different. That's all I've ever wanted. His words, so simple yet so profound, struck Gabriel to the core. Her tears fell freely now, not of sorrow, but of a kind of painful, beautiful catharsis. He was not a monster. He was the living embodiment of the hope she had thought was lost. Unconsciously, she began to hum. The hum grew into a soft, ethereal melody. A song. It was not magic, not a spell. It was a pure expression of her being. A celestial hymn that resonated with the very fabric of creation. The song was filled with sorrow for what was lost, but it was underpinned by an unshakable current of hope for what could be. It washed over Naruto, his own divine energy resonating with it, the raw power of the 10 tails soothed by the seraph's gentle song. In that moment, they were not a sage and an angel. They were just two souls, sharing a moment of profound, sorrowful understanding. The song ended, leaving a sacred silence in its wake. Just as Gabriel was about to speak again, a frantic, emergency communication circle flared to life on the floor. It was Michael's crest, but it was cracked and flickering. The seraph's voice came through, strained and filled with the sounds of battle. Gabriel, sister, it's too late. Shamhaza has seized the throne of heaven. He's declared us traitors. He's activated the protocol. The Metatron fortress is ascending. He's declared war. The connection cut out, leaving behind only a dire, echoing silence. Gabriel stood frozen, her face pale with horror. The civil war had begun. Naruto placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. His expression was no longer calm or weary. It was forged into a mask of absolute, cold resolve. His war had come for him once again. And this time, the battlefield would be the heavens themselves. Chapter 8 End. Chapter 9. The Siege of the Heavens. News of Heaven's civil war struck the underworld like a thunderclap. An emergency summit was convened in Lilith's throne room, but this time, the atmosphere was not one of political maneuvering, it was the grim prelude to war. Rias and her peerage stood with Naruto, their faces etched with a mixture of shock and determination. Gabriel, her celestial light dimmed by grief and fear, stood beside him. Her presence a silent testament to the severity of the crisis. Shamhaza has branded a hero like Naruto-kun and a gentle soul like Gabriel-sama as enemies, Searsex declared, his voice echoing with cold fury. He has usurped the throne of heaven and activated a weapon of mass destruction. This is not an internal affair of the angels. This is an act of aggression against the entire world. The old fool's finally lost it, Azazel commented, appearing in a flash of dark feathers. He was no longer lounging. He stood straight, his face hard, his fallen angel lieutenants materializing behind him. The Gremory will not stand by while a zealot threatens to reboot reality. We're in. Ajuka Beelzebub nodded, his eyes glowing with complex calculations. The Metatron protocol, if fired, would cause a cascading dimensional collapse. The integrity of the underworld, Asgard, and every other mythology is at stake. Logically, we have no choice but to intervene. Seraphal Leviathan, her magical girl persona gone, was a terrifying visage of icy rage. They made Gabi-chan cry. Unforgivable. I'm going to freeze that stupid fortress and turn Shamhaza into a popsicle. Within minutes, an unprecedented grand alliance was formed. Devils, fallen angels, the heroes of the Gremory peerage, all united under a single, unspoken leader. They all looked to Naruto. He had not asked for this war, but he was its epicenter. His presence had been the catalyst, and his power was their greatest hope. A massive teleportation array was prepared, a joint effort of Ajuka's genius and Searzex's power, designed to transport an entire army to the celestial realm. As the legions of devils and fallen angels assembled, a streak of white light tore through the underworld sky and landed before the palace. Valley Lucifer, flanked by his team, the stoic Arthur Pendragon, the cheerful Lefay, and the beastly Baiko, had arrived. "Heard you were starting a war with heaven," Valley said, a predatory grin on his face. He looked at Naruto. "Couldn't let you have all the fun. Besides," his grin widened, "no one is allowed to defeat you but me. Think of us as your unsolicited, overpowered backup." Naruto gave a slight nod of acknowledgement. The board was set. The pieces were in motion. The transition to heaven was jarring. One moment they were in the crimson twilight of Lilith. The next, they were in a realm of blinding, crystalline light, floating on clouds of solid gold. But this was not a paradise. The sky was filled with the clash of angelic steel, as loyalist angels, led by a battered but defiant Michael, foe. A desperate battle against legions of armored angels whose eyes glowed with the cold, blue light of fanaticism. And looming above it all, a breathtaking, terrifying sight, was the Metatron Protocol. It was not a fortress of stone or metal. It was a city-sized construct of pure, solidified holy energy, a geometric nightmare of interlocking rings, spinning spheres, and crystalline towers that hummed with enough power to unmake a star. At its heart, a colossal cannon was slowly gathering light, its barrel aimed at the world below. This was Shamhaz's weapon of purification. "That thing is Ling power directly from the system's core," Rossweiss analyzed, her voice tight with awe and terror. "The residual energy left by the God of the Bible. It's a closed-loop, self-sustaining weapon of absolute power. Then we'll have to break it from the inside," Naruto said, his voice cutting through the din. He turned to the assembled leaders. "Searzex, Azazel, Michael, your forces need to clear a path. Valley, you and your team are the tip of the spear. Punch a hole in their defenses. Rias, you and the others are with me. We are going straight for the heart of that fortress." The orders were given with the calm, unshakable authority of a born commander. No one questioned them. The battle began. A tide of demonic power and fallen light crashed against the celestial fortress's defenses. Urzex unleashed his power of destruction on a scale that erased entire squadrons of enemy angels from existence. Azazel, wielding a golden artificial sacred gear, tore through their formations. The sky became a chaotic canvas of crimson, black, and gold. Valley's team was a scalpel of pure devastation. With a roar of vanishing dragon, Valley in his scale mail became a white comet, his divine Devi. Ding having the power of any shield or angel he passed. Arthur's Caliburn, the Holy King's sword, cut through holy defenses as if they were paper. They carved a path directly towards the fortress's main energy conduit. Following in their wake, Naruto and his group moved. He had expanded one of his truth-seeking orbs into a large, protective platform, shielding them from the stray blasts of energy that filled the sky. They were a microcosm of the Grand Alliance. Rias, the Devil Princess, commanded smaller demonic squads with hand signals. Akano, the fallen angel devil hybrid, called down storms of holy lightning that specifically targeted the corrupted angelic machines. Zenobia and Irina, two ex-exorcists, fought back to back, their holy swords a whirlwind of righteous fury against their former brethren. Kaneko was a blur of raw power, shattering angelic armor with her bare fists. Rossweiss, the Valkyrie, proved to be their most valuable asset, shouting out the names and weaknesses of the ancient angelic runes that powered the fortress's defenses, allowing the others to strike at their weakest points. They breached the outer shell of the fortress, entering a pristine, silent corridor of pure light. The air itself hummed, and the light felt wrong. It was cold, sterile, devoid of the warmth that Gabriel radiated. It was the light of a machine, not a living being. "This way," Naruto said, his senses guiding him toward the greatest concentration of power. They fought their way through the fortress's internal defenses, golems of pure light, automated turrets firing spears of judgment, and choirs of angels whose songs were not of praise but of sonic devastation. Naruto's group worked as a single, seamless unit, their trust in each other absolute. They had been forged into a true family in the crucible of battle. Finally, they reached the core. It was a vast, spherical chamber. In the center, floating in a nexus of countless beams of light, was the seraph Shamhaza. But he was no longer just an angel. He had fused himself with the fortress's core. Wires of pure energy were embedded in his flesh, his wings were constructs of hard light, and his eyes were cold, empty blue orbs. The gentle, compassionate light of heaven had been replaced by the cold, unfeeling logic of the system. The anomaly, Shamhaza's voice boomed, layered and robotic. And the traitors, you have come to witness the purification. You are just in time. The Metatron cannon is at 98%. Shamhaza, stop this madness. Gabriel pleaded, flying forward. You are destroying the heaven you claim to protect. I am preserving it, the fused seraph countered, his voice devoid of emotion. The system must be maintained. Irregularities must be purged. Your compassion, your acceptance of filth and chaos, is a flaw in the programming. I am the firewall. I am the antivirus. I am God's unwavering will. God's will was love, not logic. Gabriel cried. Love is a variable, an element of chaos. It cannot be quantified. It must be controlled, Shamhaza stated. And the greatest element of chaos is him. Thousands of energy beams redirected, converging on Naruto. This was not a physical attack. It was an assault of pure, conceptual power. The sterile, orderly truth of the system designed to overwhelm and erase any existence that did not conform to its rules. To everyone else, the attack was a blinding flash of light. To Naruto, it was a tsunami of code. He saw the structure of heaven's magic, the laws of its physics, the core tenets of its being, all weaponized to unmake him. But he was not a part of their system. He spread his arms wide, his own power, the raw, chaotic, beautiful power of life and nature, rising to meet it. He did not erect a shield. He did not counter the attack. He simply presented the system with a truth it could not compute, himself. The sterile white light of the system crashed against the golden, vibrant light of the sage. The fortress groaned, the very fabric of the dimension trembling as two opposing divine concepts battled for supremacy. Shamhaza's attack was based on rigid, unyielding order. Naruto's power was based on infinite, adaptable life. It was a battle between a machine and a soul. Your existence is a paradox. Shamhaza roared, pouring more power into the assault. You cannot exist within his perfect creation. Your creation is not perfect. Naruto roared back, his golden eyes blazing. It's a cage, and you're just the warden. He pushed his power outward, and for the first time, Shamhaza's impassive face showed a flicker of shock. Naruto's energy wasn't just blocking his, it was beginning to rewrite it. The sterile white light was being infused with flecks of gold. The rigid beams of energy began to fray, destabilize by the introduction of a power that refused to follow their rules. But Naruto knew he couldn't win this way. The fortress was self-sustaining. He could fight it to a stalemate, but he couldn't destroy it without killing every angel inside and possibly shattering the entire celestial dimension. He needed to stop it at its source. He closed his eyes, extending his senses deep into the energy flowing into Shamhaza. He bypassed the seraph, bypassed the machinery of the fortress, and reached for the very heart of the system, the faint, decaying, but still unimaginably powerful will of the God of the Bible. It was a maelstrom of conflicting emotions, love, fury, regret, and a deep, cosmic loneliness. It was this chaotic remnant that Shamhaza was trying to force into a rigid, logical pattern. Naruto didn't try to destroy it. He didn't try to control it. He did what he had done with the 10 tails. He reached out to it with understanding. He projected his own memories, his own feelings, into the dying God's will. He showed it his own loneliness, his own struggles, his own unwavering belief in the power of connection. He didn't offer it prayers or worship. He offered it empathy. You don't have to be a system, Naruto projected. His thought a silent whisper in the heart of a god. You don't have to be a set of rules. Just be. Rest. For the first time in millennia, the raging, chaotic will of the dead god felt a moment of peace. The storm of energy calmed. The frantic, dogmatic rage that Shamhaza had been weaponizing simply ceased. Shamhaza cried out as his connection was severed. torrent of divine power flowing into him was cut off as if by a switch. The wires of light ripped from his body, the hard light wings shattered, and the Metatron cannon outside, now at 99%, sputtered and died. The fused seraph, now just a broken angel, fell from his place in the nexus, his eyes returning to their normal color, filled with a horrified understanding of what he had done. The Metatron fortress began to crumble, its power source pacified. The cold, sterile light was replaced by a gentle, warm glow. The civil war was over. Naruto stood in the center of the decaying core room, breathing heavily. The golden light around him slowly receding. He had not defeated his enemy with a punch or a blast. He had defeated him with an act of divine compassion. He had not just saved the world. He had soothed the tortured spirit of a long-dead god. He had proven that his way, the way of understanding, was stronger than any system, any dogma, any law. The siege was over. Chapter 9 End. Chapter 10. The God of a New Home. The aftermath of the siege of heaven was not a scene of glorious victory, but one of quiet, weary relief. The Metatron fortress, its power source pacified, did not crumble into dust but instead transformed. The cold, crystalline structure softened, dissolving into clouds of golden light that rained down upon the celestial realm, healing the wounds of the battle, mending the broken wings of the loyalist angels, and restoring the pristine beauty of the floating celestial islands. It was a final, gentle gift from a god who had finally found peace. Shish. Amhaza and his zealous followers were taken into custody by a solemn Michael, their fanaticism broken, leaving only a hollow, shamed understanding of the catastrophe they had almost unleashed. There were no cheers, no victory speeches, only the profound, echoing silence of a war that should never have been fought. Days later, a celebration of a different sort was held. It was not in the hallowed halls of heaven or the grand palaces of the underworld, but in the familiar, comfortable main room of the OCC Ult Research Club. It was a chaotic, vibrant, and incredibly loud affair, attended by the leaders of all factions. Searsex and a deeply grateful Michael shared a drink, a sight that would have been unthinkable just weeks prior. Azazel was eagerly swapping notes with Rossweiss on ancient magical theories. Valley and his team lingered on the outskirts, their presence a silent acknowledgement of their role, with Valley himself occasionally glancing at Naruto with an expression of impatient, burning rivalry. Naruto, however, was not at the center of the festivities. He had been offered titles: Lord of Heaven, Prince of the Underworld, Guardian of the Balance, and territories spanning all three factions. He had politely, but firmly, refused them all. He was not a king, a noble, or a general. He was, and always would be, a protector. He was in the small garden he had created for Kaneko, which had become his sanctuary. The noise of the party was a distant, happy murmur. He sat by the edge of the small pond, watching the magical koi swim, feeling a sense of peace that had eluded him for what felt like a lifetime. One by one, they came to him, seeking him out in the quiet. Rias was the first. She came to him not as the ruined princess or the king of her peerage, but simply as Rias. She sat beside him, her crimson hair a splash of vibrant color in the serene garden. "Is this it, then?" she asked softly. "Is the world finally safe?" "For now," he answered, his gaze fixed on the water. "There will always be another battle. Then let us face it together," she said, her voice firm. She placed her hand over his. "You came to my territory, you shattered my understanding of the world. You saved my life and the lives of everyone I care about. You are no longer just a guest, Naruto. This is your home, and I want to be a part of it. With you." Her confession was not a demand or a contract, it was a simple, vulnerable truth. He turned to her, and seeing the unwavering sincerity in her blue-green eyes, he squeezed her hand, a silent acceptance that spoke volumes more than words. Akano was next. She approached with her usual grace, but her smile was soft, genuine, stripped of its usual seductive teasing. She knelt before him, taking his other hand. "You saw the storm inside of me," she said, her voice a low, intimate whisper, "and you didn't try to calm it. You taught me how to fly in it." Since the battle, she had begun to integrate her holy and demonic powers, creating a new form of lightning that was a breathtaking, beautiful silver. "For the first time in my life, I am not ashamed of who I am. I am whole, and I owe that to you." She leaned in and kissed his cheek, a gesture of pure, unadulterated affection that was more potent than any of her previous advances. Kaneko simply came and sat on his other side, curling up against his arm, her usual stoic silence now a comfortable, trusting presence. Asia followed, offering him a cup of tea she had brewed, her smile a beacon of gentle, unwavering devotion. Zenobia and Irina appeared together, their swords sheathed. Zenobia, ever the pragmatist, simply gave a sharp nod. You are a leader worth following. My sword is yours. Irina, her faith now placed not in a dead god but in the living man before her, beamed. You showed us that strength and kindness can be the same thing. You're the best kind of hero. Rossweiss adjusted her glasses, a professional memo clutched in her hand that she promptly ignored. Logically speaking, my employment prospects have never been better. But, I find I no longer wish to seek other employment. This family, is a position I would like to hold permanently. Then, in a swirl of foxfire, Yusaka materialized. Her 9 tails swaying gracefully. She sat before him, her eyes filled with the ancient wisdom of a Yukai leader and the warm affection of a woman. My daughter asks for, Uncle Naruto, every day. The Yukai of Kyoto see you not as an outsider, but as a great sage, a kindred spirit of nature. Our alliance is eternal, as is my personal gratitude. In a flash of pink sparkles, Seraphal popped into existence, tackling him in a hug from behind. Number 1 fan reporting for duty. I told the other Satans that since you didn't want any territory, you should get a personal guard. And I volunteered to be the super cute, super strong commander. It's a lifetime appointment. Finally, a soft, celestial light filled the garden. Gabriel descended, her 12 wings casting a gentle, holy glow. The others gave her a respectful space. Her bond with Naruto was different, a connection on a divine level that they all implicitly understood. Heaven is rebuilding, she said, her voice like a peaceful hymn. Michael is leading with a new doctrine of understanding and acceptance, the very ideals you showed us. You saved my home, Naruto. But more than that, you saved its soul. She looked at him, her angelic eyes filled with a love that transcended mortal definition. Our natures may be different, our paths unique, but our light, it resonates. I will always be your ally, your friend. He was surrounded. 10 powerful, beautiful, and utterly unique women, each one a pillar of her own world, had all chosen to build their world around him. He looked at each of them, seeing not a harem, not a collection, but a family. A chaotic, powerful, impossibly complicated family that he had unknowingly forged. He stood up, and they all looked at him, awaiting his words. He felt the vast, cosmic power of the 10 tails within him, not as a weapon, but as a tool. A tool for creation. The clubhouse is getting a little crowded, he said, a rare, wide grin spreading across his face. It was the old, familiar grin of Naruto Uzumaki, the one that promised mischief and miracles. He placed his hand on the back wall of the Occult Research Club building. He didn't destroy it, he changed it. The wall shimmered and became a grand, ornate torii gate, pulsing with a gentle, golden light. Come on, he said, gesturing for them to follow. Let's go home. He led them through the gate. The space on the other side was not a room, it was a new world. He had folded space-time, creating a pocket dimension of impossible size and beauty. It was a sprawling estate, a fusion of 2 worlds. A grand, Japanese-style mansion that looked like a Hokage's residence stood at its center, surrounded by the elegant, Gothic architecture of the underworld. A massive cherry blossom tree, a perfect twin to the one in Kaneko's garden, stood in the central courtyard. A bubbling hot spring, sourced from the purest waters of heaven, steamed gently nearby. And in the distance, perched on a small hill overlooking the estate, was a perfect, loving replica of Ichiraku Ramen. It was a home built by God, for the family he had chosen. It was a place of peace, a sanctuary carved from the chaos of the cosmos. The final scene is of that evening. Naruto sits on the porch of the grand mansion, a bowl of ramen in his hands. Rias and Akano are leaning against him on either side. Kaneko is asleep in his lap. Asia and Irina are trying to teach a flustered Rossweiss how to play a card game at a nearby table. Zenobia is sparring with Kiba in the courtyard, their blades ringing in the twilight. Yusaka is telling stories to a delighted Seraphal, her fox tails occasionally brushing against Naruto's back. Gabriel sits on the porch rail, her wings folded, humming her gentle, celestial song, providing a perfect, peaceful soundtrack to the moment. He looked at the faces of his new family, their laughter and light chasing away the last shadows of his old world's pain. He had lost his home, his friends, his dream of becoming Hokage. But here, in this impossible new reality, surrounded by devils, angels, Valkyries, and foxes, he had found something he never knew he was searching for. He was no longer just Naruto Uzumaki, the Jinchuriki. He was no longer the lonely 10-tailed god. He was home. But even as peace reigned in his new sanctuary, the universe did not sleep. Deep in the blackest abyss of the dimensional gap, the dragon god of infinity, Ophis, watched the new divine signature with cold, calculating curiosity, her plans for the Chaos Brigade now complicated by a power that dwarfed her own. And even deeper than that, in a void outside of reality, a being of true, primordial origin, a great red that had long forgotten its own fractured past, stirred from an eon of slumber. It felt a piece of itself, a long-lost, agonizing wound, had finally, impossibly, been made whole. And it was curious. The adventure was far from over. Chapter 10 End.